The helicopter circles in the sky. The searchlight picks out fragments of the streets, illuminating the area below it. So-called transmits the coordinates of the target. Movement was recorded in the area of the 13th City Hospital. The police block the building, move towards the entrances, and surround the perimeter in a tight ring. An ultimatum is heard from the loudspeaker, and beacons flash at the entrance. Inside is a criminal with a gun at the hostage's head. He stands with the muzzle pointed, ready to shoot at the slightest movement. The sniper is in position, the police are hesitant. The risk of wounding the hostage is too great. The probability of success is 10%. Emotions prevent concentration. The situation gets out of control. The hostage does not remain silent. He hints at the presence of a sniper. The criminal is losing patience. The tension is growing. Every sound is like an explosion. The police understand that the plot has been uncovered. The criminal has understood their plan and has begun to act. The hostage continues to speak, suggesting that it is better to hide now. The criminal screams. Anger overwhelms him. He loses control of the situation. The door is slammed. The windows are curtained. Contact is lost, and people outside freeze in alarm. The police are at a loss. Their suspicions are growing. The criminal has realized something. The command orders a retreat. The invader may have something extremely important in his hands. The criminal looks out of the window. Below is a pack of police dogs. The circle is tightening. He frowns, wondering if they know he has it in his hands. That can't be right. Luigi looks at him with a sneer. The situation is getting out of control. Trying to escape with the hostage no longer seems reasonable. The criminal is irritated. His nerves are on edge. He points his gun. The hostage does not look away, as if he is not afraid of anything. Around there is a place where time has almost stopped. The walls are saturated with silence. The answer sounds calm. This is a hospice. They don't wait for life here. Reality suddenly collapses. The criminal realizes where he ended up. The maximum life here is 2 months. A flash of rage, he curses, gritting his teeth in helplessness. The hostage looks calmly. Fear loses its meaning when there is not much time left to live. The criminal breaks down, a flash of alarm in his eyes. Luigi asks. The kidnapper just looked at himself very closely. Did he hide something valuable there? He is surprised, but does not have time to do anything. In an instant, a pillow flies into his face. The blow dully knocks him unconscious, but he manages to aim the gun. The hostage lunges forward, his hands clasped around the criminal's wrists. A blow to the jaw. The pistol jerked, fingers convulsively clenched on the trigger. A fight in a cramped room. Breathing is heavy. Footsteps echo loudly in the walls. The gun is thrown out of control. The hostage holds the attacker's hand. The criminal screams, losing his balance, and falls to the floor with a dull groan. He groans in pain, looking at the ceiling, realizing that he has been outwitted. Hostage Luigi looks calmly. He has nothing to lose, not much time left. But the reason is not illness. He mentions the time spent. Exactly 7 minutes 28 seconds interrupted his routine. He begins to search the criminal, meeting no resistance. There's a strange object inside. That's what he was hiding. Those people surrounded him because of that thing, Luigi wonders. The criminal screams, trying to break free and take the item, but it's too late. The find is in the wrong hands. The hostage examines the object. It is strange and suddenly begins to glow. The criminal in panic is not just a thing. A system window appears, a record of time travel. A sound echoes through the air, distorted, like a crack in reality. The hostage is surprised, but does not retreat. He senses that he is holding something important. The bandit insists. He doesn't understand what he's done. It's an account from another world. But because of it, he's finished. The criminal is furious, but receives a powerful blow to the face and falls again. The hostage takes the gun. Now threat replaces helplessness. Luji is already doomed to die. He demands an explanation. There is no more time. Every word weighs too much. He wants to know everything about the otherworldly account. The criminal surrenders, his voice trembling. He is ready to tell everything, just to survive. In 2050, the sky split open. A meteor shower brought not destruction, but something else. The world has changed forever. The boundaries of reality have become shaky, as if dream and reality have merged. Some people develop the ability to move into another, unfamiliar world. There, they faced trials, strange, dangerous, unpredictable. The only way to return was by winning. Failure meant eternal imprisonment. For success, the world gave incredible gifts: jewelry, power, healing, knowledge beyond comprehension. Some brought weapons with them, others, medicines for all diseases. People began to attack travelers through the worlds, wanting to learn the secret of crossing spaces. Only after playing games and battles did people realize account is the key to the transition. After activation, a teleportation mark appeared on the owner's body. The transition occurred in 15 minutes. Such people began to be called travelers. They disappeared into the unknown, leaving behind only a glimmer of light. Now, 59 minutes left, and there may be no way back. They started to break down the door. A forceful breakthrough. The assault team is moving forward. Police officers shout orders, guns pointed into the room. They freeze. In the middle of the room, on a chair, sits the tied-up kidnapper. The gun lies on the floor. There is no one nearby. The tension gives way to confusion. Meanwhile, the interface flashes in the air. A system message appears in the void. The caption reads, "The traveler is better." The test will begin in 1 minute. The interrogation makes it clear. Time flows differently between worlds. In reality, only a moment passes, even if hours have passed in the other world. When crossing, it is forbidden to take anything except clothes. Weapons remain in this world. Luji sighs. It's a pity to enter the unknown unarmed. He's standing on the roof. There's a commotion below. That guy was taken away, which means they won't touch him for now. The criminal's words come to mind. The tests are like a game. There is danger, but it is not fatal. A system message flashes in the air. 10 seconds left until the test begins. Preparations for the transition are underway. He smiles. He found the supernatural world. A few months before the end of his life, it would be stupid to retreat. The path to the other world is a chance, the last and only one, which he does not refuse. The pulse quickens, but the step is taken. There is no way back. The traveler's connection begins. Reality disintegrates into light lines. Participant scanning has begun. The system is generating basic parameters. The entry zone is defined. Public zone is the starting point for a new journey. Traveler confirmed. Luja. System access activated. Once you've completed character creation, a map will open that can be accessed with the power of thought. This is the other world. Luja's first reaction is a mixture of surprise and tension. The character card displays the current status and parameters of the traveler. All changes during the tests are automatically recorded in the system. A table of characteristics appears before Luja's eyes. His starting data. Status window. Name. Luja. Level. 1. Gender. Human. HP. 100%. SP. 100%. Attack power. Very weak. Defense. Low. Spiritual resistance. Extremely weak. Speed. Low. Perception. Low. Strength. 2. Dexterity. 2. Body. 3. Perception. 2. Spirit. 3. All parameters are divided into 5 key types. Strength, affects the attack level. Agility determines speed. Body forms the HP limit. Perception is responsible for sensitivity. Spirit affects spiritual resistance and SP. Skills and items. Table, backpack, 0 out of 30. Skills, none. Mechanisms, none. Current points, 0. Intensity rating, paper. Current inventory space, 30 items. Points can only be obtained through trials. They will become currency. In the public zone, points are exchanged or sold to other participants. The intensity rating is the level of safety determined by the system. Current rank, paper. Vulnerability, critical. A murmur appears in the crowd. Someone has pulled out green equipment. Everyone turns around. A poisonous sword. A parallel level rarity. People are discussing. Isn't this the same sword that exploded in another test? No one believes that anyone would dare to sell green equipment. The death penalty for the test is too great. The merchant smiles. This is indeed the same poison sword. Level. Green. Attack. Normal. Effect. Chance to inflict poison when attacking. There are 4 known levels of challenges: paper, parallel, strong, and brutal. Brutal level is an uncharted zone. Warriors who have passed the parallel and strong levels are considered the elite of the system. Their weapons are green and blue equipment, incredibly rare and valuable. The poison sword is an item from the parallel layer. It was stolen from a member in the top 56 of the hate table. The most dangerous rating. It's contraband. The sale is illegal. There's a discount now. The sword is being sold for only 500 points. The crowd is in an uproar. The stakes are rising. The tension is growing. Everyone is greedily fixated with their eyes on the poisonous sword. The seller smiles. Everything went according to plan. The fools took the bait. A bright light flashes in the sky. A sparkling strip above their heads. A howl rings in their ears, metallic, alarming, cutting. People fall silent, some turn pale. This is the alarm of the public zone. Panic begins to mount. A system window pops up on the screen. Alert. A dangerous person is trying to enter the zone. The message is repeated. The threat cannot be ignored. Law enforcement is already on the way. The knights of the system are ready for battle. The court's force in the safe zone is strong. Their mission is to stop the target. Target detected. Criminal number 1, leader of the Table of Hatred. Initial character card loaded for threat assessment. Name, the best. Level, 1. Genus, human. HP, 100%. SP, 100%. Attack power is very weak. Defense is low. Spiritual fortitude is critically weak. Speed and perception are at a minimum, but the danger is still great. Strength 2, Dexterity 2, Body 3, Perception 2, Spirit 3. The basic parameters of threat. Lugi noticed that the guards were staring at him. The seller is in a panic. The knight's attack has begun. The knights rushed to attack, trying to strike. The seller realized that he had lied about his fate. He asked the running Luigi. He is also a criminal. Luigi was outraged. What nonsense he was talking. It would be better if he told him where to run and how to hide. A system alert has appeared. The criminal Luigi is on the list. Wanted index is 6 stars, maximum threat level. All efforts to capture, up to the destruction of consciousness. The scam is exposed. The game is not safe, and the price is very high. The seller and Luigi ran to the escape portal. The knights came closer with every step. The system notified. The entrance to the dungeon is closed. The hatred is too high. What nonsense is this? Thought Luigi. We need to teleport faster. There was a flash of fire. The teleporter didn't work for one of them. The seller understood. There would be no escape. The situation was critical. Traveler Lujin begins the test with the highest difficulty. Cruel. The reward will be a purple-level chest, the rarest treasure. Warning: death in cruelty mode means real death. Challenge loaded, obstacles activated. System message: don't be afraid of death. Enjoy the game. The goal is to survive and hold out until the end. Hints. 1. Don't be afraid of death. The test is the most famous program in the entire multiverse. Many distinguished guests join the observation process. Candidates are advised to be courteous to the guests. The favor of guests is divided into levels, from the intent to kill, disgust, coldness, friendliness, infatuation, obsession. The candidate's personal qualities influence the attitude of the guests. Low favorability or manifestation of disgust lead to problems. The system wants to enjoy the game, the blind date, and the search for destiny. Lujan is surprised. Can he die in reality? A new candidate has appeared, invited to the stage. The host welcomes everyone, men, women, and gender neutral. The spotlights illuminate him. The crowd holds its breath. "Do not fear death," says the host. Luji recalls that the guy said no one had ever passed the cruel level test before. The question is, why did they announce a new team right away? Lujan is a candidate from the human dimension. Okay, he decides, let's see what happens next. The crowd cheers in admiration, calling him handsome and strong. Viewers expect surprises from this contender. The program is sponsored by the Spatial Committee and the Dimension of Singles. This show is a blind date, where destinies are decided under pressure. Lujan recalls that he was previously considered an arsonist, and a fire would start in the hearts of girls. Lujan regrets that he didn't meet with his fans after the injury. It's time to find out the strength of the candidate. Paper Level is the first such candidate on the scene. Lujan asks the system for an explanation of power levels. The system explains, all creatures are divided into classes. Paper Level, extremely weak and vulnerable. Parallel Level, mediocre combat capability. Strong Level, high combat power. Cruel Level, the most powerful, like a boss. Lujan is a paper tier representative, new to the game. Lujan realized that these are boss challenges and his life may be on the line. Newbies have only one chance to pass the test. Luja is the best player in the history of the game. Those whose death will be epic remain on the Don't Fear Death stage. Luja tries to understand the situation. He is witty and confident, calls the host a light bulb. The host is perplexed. This is blind date. Where to look for love? So, where is the date? Luja decides, first to earn trust, then to pass the test. The presenter explains that the body is in the game, not his. Just a hologram. He doesn't look like a light bulb. The presenter introduces the first girl. The girl comes out of the darkness. This is the beginning of a new stage. She appeared with a huge maw full of sharp fangs instead of a mouth. Her gaze was full of predatory energy. She blew a kiss to Ludya, a sign of interest and threat at the same time. The host noted that Miss Tender Red Lips is the star of the program, feeding on fear. She senses people's moods and loves to ask questions about her beauty. After this, the girl devours her victims, causing them horror and panic. Luja closed his eyes, steeling himself, and quietly said, "Pretty." Next on stage was Miss Slenderlegs, an unusual and frightening guest of the show. Her special feature is that she lays eggs in her partners after intercourse so that they can bear offspring. But now all her partners are dead, and she is forced to participate in the show again. Luja looked at her with disappointment but said, "Excellent, beautiful." The host announced the third girl, Miss Beautiful Shapes. Luja was skeptical about the level of transmission, insisting that one should not underestimate a man on his deathbed. A giant hand emerged from the darkness, destroying the walls with one touch, causing cracks and dust. Girl number 3 was known as the Butcher, having tortured 16 partners and had a reputation for being unlucky in relationships. The presenter showed her signature battle roar, which inspired fear and respect at the same time. Luja was skeptical about the title of girl for such a monster, not hiding his surprise. The girl was upset and quickly left the stage, tears glistening in her eyes. The host noted that despite her rough appearance, deep down she remains gentle, and such comments could lead to her exclusion from the show. Luja felt that there were almost no girls on this show who met the usual human standards of beauty. The host noted that there was one more participant left, the famous beauty of the entire metaverse. She was said to be on the verge of entering the insane level associated with the 7 deadly sins. Her name was Miss Sloth. Luja noted that this was promising. The host invited Miss Sloth to come on stage, but no one showed up. The host said that Miss Laziness decided not to come in person and would watch the events from home, participating remotely. The game continued with Luja having to spend the day outside the house interacting with the featured monster girls. Now he had a choice. Join Miss Tender Red Lips, Miss Beautiful Shapes, or Miss Slender Legs, each of whom had their own terrible but attractive features. In the courtroom, Jindali tried to justify himself, claiming that he was just a small merchant and had nothing to do with the first wanted criminal. The judge and those present studied the investigation materials and confirmed his non-involvement with the first of the wanted criminals. However, it was discovered that Jindali was selling counterfeit equipment, which caused discontent among many people. For this, the arbitration court decided to impose a punishment on him: 200 hate points and exile to the city of hate, a special place where violators are sent. After the verdict was announced, the hearing was suspended for a break. The clerk asked whether the search should continue for the most dangerous traveler, the one at the top of the wanted list. However, the judge said that there was no point in this, since at the current level, the traveler would not be able to survive the brutal test. The judge was sure that the dungeon where the test was taking place would be a death sentence for him. The dungeon test: Do Not Fear Death. Nightmare Dunfu level, cruel, sat upset, feeling all the cruelty of the test. She ate the bear, angry at Luju. He dared to speak rudely about her. She was ready to kill him if she met him again. She never thought that such a seemingly beautiful game could contain such cruel people. At this time, a system notification about the relationship status appeared. Miss Tender Red Lips and Miss Slender Legs remained friendly, but Miss Beautiful Shapes showed disgust. Luja didn't expect that his words would hurt the girl so much. Miss Beautiful Shapes' attitude suddenly changed to murderous. Suddenly, a huge hand with a club and an axe appeared and began to swing at Luju. He felt a threat behind him. The axe was practically above his head. Luja wondered where the beauty he had accidentally offended had disappeared to. The sword froze in the air right above his head. The girl, stunned by his words, could not believe what she heard. Luja, known for his charm, admitted that he had never met a girl like Danfu. After her anger, he felt as if he had been cut by a blade, and he grabbed his heart. Realizing that he may not have seen all the tenderness hidden beneath her powerful exterior. This hidden tenderness deeply touched Danfu herself. Luji continued, he had never seen such a person before and wondered what exactly attracted him to her. A combination of tenderness, comfort, kindness, and harshness. A system alert reported a change in relationship, from disgust to friendliness, and then to infatuation. Luja admitted that he screwed up by letting such a wonderful girl go, because among the many beauties, there is no one else with such a temperament. Danfu's heart beat in the rhythm of love. He said that he once heard that true beauty is hidden not on the surface, but deep inside. Despite the surrounding filth and cruelty, wonderful flowers can grow there. And that is exactly what Miss Danfu was. With these words, Luja plucked a flower and smiled, expressing his sincere sympathy. The axe fell to the ground with a dull sound. Luji turned around, surprised. Danfu stood before him. The system issued a notification. Miss Beautiful Shape's favorability level had risen to the fanatical stage. Now she can be chosen as an official spouse. Along with this, it was indicated that Nightmare Wand had developed a paranoid attachment to him. The player received 500 bonus points for the achievement. Luji breathed a sigh of relief. The girl was overcome with strong emotions. No one had ever treated her like this before. She felt that she had made a decision. Luji was surprised to see her change, but before he could process what exactly she had decided, she suddenly let out a powerful battle roar. He quickly covered his ears, startled by her unexpected reaction. The girl turned to the two rivals with a battle cry, making it clear that she considered Luji only hers. The system recorded a change in attitude. Miss Tender Lips and Slender Legs now felt disgust towards him. Danfu, on the other hand, was pleased with this outcome. Luji realized with annoyance that his flirting with others had been a fatal mistake, especially with Danfu so furious. As she rushed towards him, filled with emotion and the intention to be together forever, he panicked and realized that if she hugged him, he might not survive. At that moment, her legs became entangled in the web. She tripped and fell. Despite this, she continued to call Luji, but the web began to envelop her head, completely absorbing her. Danfu screamed in anger, blaming Spider, calling her dead. The system identified the spider as a demonic abyssal spider, a brutal-level monster. In response, Spider-Woman sneered sarcastically, calling Danfu a barbarian with muscles instead of a brain, incapable of even holding a man. And she offered to hand Luji over to her for re-education. Danfu did not back down and shouted that Luji belonged to her. The spider, changing her tone, addressed Luji, calling him sovereign and asking permission to ask a question. She asked if he would agree to bear a child for her. At that moment, Luji realized that her attitude had changed to disgust. He also realized that if he gave the wrong answer, after Danfu's words, the chances of immediate death were about 90%. The best tactic is to take the initiative, he interrupted Spider, addressing her coldly and questioning her words. He recalled that she claimed that she liked him, but now it turns out that her interest was only for the sake of the child. Luji feigned insult, changing the balance of power. He was shocked, accusing Spider of cold calculation. He claimed that she simply intended to use him as a vessel to bear a child, without ever having any real feelings for him. The Spider-Woman confusedly denied it, but he did not back down, continuing to insist. If there was no wedding between them, what would the child's surname be? The spider was forced to justify herself, confused. She insisted that everything was not so, but her tone was already uncertain. The system message recorded a sharp change in the attitude of two participants towards Luji, Slender Leg, and a certain lady's favor level changed to friendliness. This was unexpected. Luji clearly didn't expect this. He was overcome with surprise. It seemed that everything was starting to get out of control. But suddenly, the situation acquired a strange stability. Yes, indeed, the turn of events was impressive. The entire audience was amazed. An earthquake of emotions swept over the audience, and many began to look at Luha differently, recognizing his good qualities, even those who had previously doubted him. Luja masterfully seized the initiative and forced Miss Slenderlegs to shut up, a move that caused a storm of approval. Several gender equality agencies publicly expressed support for Luja, and his words resonated with many viewers. The host noted with surprise over the microphone that Miss Laziness had shown interest in the participant for the first time, sending a message asking him to tell about Ludge. Luja thought that the first surprise had passed, but the real tests and intrigues were just beginning. While Luja was pondering the possibility of there being other participants besides the known three girls, Miss Delicate Red Lips suddenly appeared behind him. Her usual manner, seduction, and hesitant recognition of her beauty was suddenly interrupted by a shocking act. She didn't have time to ask a single question about her beauty. Luji's unexpected slap stunned everyone. Even the other two contestants, Miss Slender Legs and Miss Beautiful Shapes, froze in surprise. Luja himself was calm. He does not tolerate uncertainty and believes that a girl with such an appearance is obliged to be aware of her influence. A pause hung in the air. The tender lips holding her cheek did not immediately understand what had happened. The presenter, in shock, asked several times whether he had heard everything correctly. The crowd began to roar. Some shouted that Luja had crossed the line, others that he was a real hero. There were accusations and admiration. The situation was developing rapidly. The host confidently predicted the inevitable reaction from Miss Tender Red Lips. After all, as we know, she always asks questions about her appearance, and any wrong answer could turn into a disaster. But this time, everything went differently. When the cameras focused on her again, all the spectators and participants saw was not anger, not fury, but confusion. Miss Tender Red Lips was speechless for the first time. She looked at Luja with wide eyes. Where was the fear? Where was the usual tremor of horror in his eyes? Nothing. Not a hint. And at that moment, something changed. Her heart started beating faster. A notification sounded. The hatred value has reached its maximum level. A new mechanism, the source of evil, has been received. Luja, not fully aware of what was happening, saw his hand begin to glow. A symbol appeared on his skin. A system message appeared. The evil touch mechanism is the source of evil. Only by coming into contact with an evil creature can this mechanism be obtained. The protective effect of the value of hatred remains stable. Up to the maximum allowed value, there is a constant hunt, still active. The active effect consumes 30% SP, causing objects in contact to experience a state of ecstasy. Passive effect of the word, suggestive. Your power is constantly increasing. Objects entering the state of ecstasy can receive hints after the set time has passed. Luksha felt a pulsation in his hand. The mechanism was active. The source of evil had awakened. The girl with red lips trembled, covering her mouth. Her cheeks were burning. In her eyes there was a gleam of mad delight. The system reported, the object has entered a state of ecstasy. Attitude has been temporarily changed. Obsession. She slowly reached out to him, her lips trembling. Her whole body was calling. Her heart was bursting out, without words, without shame. She crawled as if in a dream. I adore you. I love you. Take me. Her insides whispered. Luja took a step back, his head ringing. They were all crazy. He looked around, all three of them. Monsters, in love, unpredictable. A terrible mixture of passion and menace, they were terribly possessive. The silence was cut by a blow. The girls rushed at each other, flashing fangs, weapons, and sharp claws. Dust flying, screams, envy. The creepy owners weren't going to share him. Never. Not for anything. Luja stood in the center. All the blows flew past. Each one tried to eliminate the other. Danfu shouted, claiming her rights. The spider laughed. Her plan is simple. Destroy everyone. Remain alone. Red Lips burned with rage. Their scream echoed throughout the arena, scorching the air. Danfu rushed forward. Lips and Legs followed her. All for one thing. Touch. Recognition. Possession. Luja realized, one step to the side, and you will be torn apart. They are not just monsters. They are a tragedy of passion. Three girls of the cruel level began to fight over Luja, each not allowing the others to even come close. He realized that this was not love, but a possessive rage seasoned with a monstrous obsession. Luja realized that choosing one meant death from the other two, because they would not forgive rejection. But if you don't choose anyone, the fight will end. and the winner will attack first. It's still death. He rejected everyone, refused to participate. Battles did not arouse feelings in him. The girls didn't understand. Their reaction was a mixture of anger, confusion, and growing horror. The system did not allow for refusal. Every choice led to destruction. Even silence was a death sentence. Luigi said that even if the girls destroyed the whole world, it wouldn't move him. Danfu asked him if he wanted to leave them. The spider doubted his decision. Luigi admitted his suspiciousness and suggested that they spend some time alone together to understand their feelings. He came up with a way to break the rules of the game. First, deal with each one separately. He promised that after that, he would definitely choose a beloved. Danfu tried to object, but Luigi continued. He thought that by not refusing them, he would not give himself away. He promised that he would be able to take care of his beloved and future offspring. The spider approved of his words, considering it a great decision. Luigi decided to create a semblance for the girls and give them hope. Even if he had to die at the hands of one of them, he was ready to accept it, with love. The girl with red lips promised that she would definitely prove her feelings to him and smiled, adding that she was perfect for the role of his killer. There are only 50 minutes left until the end of the program. Vordalaka was digging in the ground when he suddenly received a blow to the head. Luigi attacked him. The monster asked him contemptuously if he was suicidal, and then his mouth and eyes glowed menacingly. Miss Tenderlips shouted Luigi in panic. She came to her man's defense, demanding an explanation. The ghoul tried to explain, but it was too late. The girl stabbed him in the eye and he ran away in fear. Luksha received a gift from the girl. The eye of a ghoul, a powerful blue monster. This is a very valuable material, a rare trophy. The girl said that when they entered the newlyweds' room, she had a lot to tell them. At the same time, Luja turned to Miss Tenderlips, saying that he also had a lot to say. He inspired her. She thought he hated her. When he looked at her like that, she didn't know at what moment and how to kill him. There is a powerful instinct hidden in her gaze. But despite this, he considered her the most sincere and pure of all the girls he had seen, and admitted that he would like to die at her hands. The girl replied that she could do it. He noted that the show would not allow such an outcome. He explained that the show is designed for viewers to watch their development and struggle, not for their happiness. The organizers want content, not real feelings. He was not provocative, but he recommended not to set a time limit for the show, and she agreed, finding logic in it. The suggestion worked. Luigi suddenly screamed in fear, pretending to be scared. Monsters! He was so scared. She decided to check who dared to scare her handsome man. The girl immediately rushed forward to protect him. At the same time, Luigi mentally decided that since the show was plotting against him, he also had a surprise for them. He noticed that the remaining time of the program was only 28 minutes and decided to go in search of the next girl. In the middle of the burning plain stood a bear with eyes glowing in the dark. Suddenly, a girl with scarlet lips appeared and easily tore the beast in half. In the afterglow of her ecstasy, she felt an irresistible attraction to Luigi. However, once the effect had completely worn off, her expression changed. She looked at her bloody hands with amazement and confusion. The system message confirmed the change in attitude. She now had murderous intent. Luigi realized that time was up. Touching Spider, she felt a strange reaction. She responded sincerely. Her attraction was genuine. She explained that, unlike the others, she did not seek his death. Her desire was to create a family where he could live in safety, surrounded by care and children. The spider made it a condition. Either he belonged to her or he died. The time for choosing was inexorably shortening. Luigi, despite his outward calm, was hiding an ultimatum behind the soft wording. And now he had to answer. Luigi, looking at Spider, admitted that her offer sounded tempting. However, he reminded her that he had his own conditions. If she really wants a child from him, She must take his safety seriously. She agreed, noting that his body was of exceptional value. But he pointed out the crux of the problem. In the current trial, danger lurks at every turn. The very structure of the show does not suggest concern for feelings or real love. Everything is turned into a competition for the sake of spectacle. He stressed that neither her maternal wishes nor his survival really mattered to anyone. Shouldn't such a program be terminated if it simply leaves no chance for genuine connection or safety? The spider, shaken by Luch-Shi's words, experienced an internal fracture. The system message confirmed. Her mind had begun to change. However, before she had time to realize what was happening, a girl with red lips appeared, full of rage. She screamed, accusing Luja of playing with her feelings. The spider immediately stood up to defend her, blocking her path. Luji tried to calm them down, but the tension was growing. The girl with the red lips was beside herself, her eyes filled with a bloody light. She accused Spider of breaking the rules and demanded her death. The spider, in response, used her web threads to stop her rival, but she, in a rage, tore them apart in one movement, and she rushed forward. When Spider tried to repel the attack with her spikes, a furious blow from the sword cut through the air, and the next moment, the limb was cut off. Both of them. A bloody cut appeared on Spider's face, a scarlet stripe running down her cheek. She looked straight ahead, not hiding her surprise and rage. Her opponent, the girl with red lips, stood coldly in front of her and demanded that she hand over Luju. The spider responded with restraint but anger, hinting that she was ready for a fight and did not intend to give in. Their gazes met, sparks ignited. The atmosphere became tense. They both knew there was no turning back. A fierce struggle began between them, in which each side was ready to go to the end. The system message said there were only 5 minutes left until the test was completed. Luji laughed quietly. It was all leading to this, to a disaster that could not be stopped. He heard a familiar voice behind him and turned to see Danfu standing in the shadows, her eyes filled with reproach and pain. She accused him of cheating. She said she waited, she hoped, but he never came. Instead, he spent time with others. An axe flashed in her hands. Without hesitation, she swung. Luji tried to answer, but didn't have time. A sharp blow, and his hand fell to the ground with a crunch. A system message popped up. HP 10% out of 100. Pain shot through his entire body, but he only sighed heavily and closed his eyes. He didn't try to defend himself. He didn't run. He just accepted what he probably thought he deserved. The girl looked at Luji and quietly said that he reminded her of someone from the past. At that time, she did not yet live in this world. She was an ordinary butcher. Because of her appearance, fat, ugly, no one ever paid attention to her. And only one person once told her that she had a beautiful heart. He was the first person who showed her care, made her feel like she was important. He asked her to help him by passing on something that turned out to be contraband. He assured her that she was kind, that she could do it, that he trusted her. She ran to fulfill his request, but they started chasing her. The men shouted for her to stop. Out of breath, she ran to an alley and hid. From behind the door, she heard those same men laughing. One called her ugly, the other disgusting. They discussed how they wouldn't have received the goods without her, and even praised the quality. She heard it all. She stood silently. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The lover's words sounded with a grin. It was worth telling her a couple of pleasant phrases, and she was ready to follow him everywhere. She did everything he ordered. They laughed, confident that they had found a convenient person who was easy to manipulate. Suddenly, cries of terror rang out. Someone shouted a curse in panic, surprised by Danfu's appearance. A commotion began. Someone tried to stop it, but it was too late. Blood splattered everywhere. She cut the man into many pieces without hesitation. Then, Calmly turning to Luigi, she said the words he had spoken when they first met. They were very similar to what that man had once told her. That was what she liked most, and she wanted revenge. Danfu froze. She didn't immediately understand what had happened, but something inside her shifted. Luigi was smiling. The system has registered a 30% SP consumption. The Touch of Evil ability has been activated. The severed hand she had been clutching tightly slipped from her fingers and fell to the ground. At that moment, Luigi's eyes lit up. The suggestion began to work. His voice sounded especially clear, piercing her consciousness. He asked a question that hit the nail on the head. Did she remember her name? For a moment she lost the thread of reality and asked again, not understanding what name was being discussed. After all, during her entire participation in the 16th season of the show, she was simply called Miss Beautiful Forms. And only now, for the first time in a long time, she was reminded that she was supposed to have something more than just a nickname. Danfu's gaze faltered. Something in her began to change. The roar that erupted from Danfu's chest was full of pain, rage, and awakening truth. For the first time she realized that all this time she had been nothing but a puppet, an instrument for entertainment, without a name, without a past, without the right to real feelings. Lodge's words cut deeper than any weapon. Kill them all. His voice was calm, almost cold. He was not giving an order. He was opening his eyes. Everything became clear. Not only the participants of the show used it, but also the creators, the viewers, the system itself. The spider and the girl with red lips looked at Danfu. She screamed that she would kill them and rushed to attack. There were 30 seconds left until the end of the program. The girls screamed that she was another crazy woman. Luigi was lying on the ground with his arm torn off. There are 10 seconds left until the end of the program. His HP was 5 out of 100%. Condition: bleeding. HP was gradually decreasing. Received item: spider's paw. Received item: hand of a disfigured girl. A scissor sword was sticking out of the ground. Obtained purple equipment. Fierce Ripper. The girl with red lips asked what he was doing. Spider and Danfu turned their attention to him. Luigi wished, "Enjoy watching." HP dropped to 0 out of 30. Condition: near death. Congratulations, the program is finished. The main task is accomplished. System reminder: a certain lady's attitude towards you has increased to the point of being touched. The exit of Miss Beautiful Form was announced. The comments were accompanied by mockery. She had killed the candidate again, for the 13th time. Her return to the show raised eyebrows. She was asked when was the last time she lived for herself and not the show. The host noted that all 3 guests of the show were defeated, and that the mouse, the candidate, managed to escape, which was an incredible event. The audience began to be indignant and demanded their money back. They expected to see the death of the participant. The host reminded that the recording of the broadcast will be archived and may affect the rating of the participants. At that moment, a huge blade pierced the ground near him. An enraged Danfu appeared on the scene. Danfu expressed dissatisfaction with the show, claiming that no one needs it anymore. The presenter got scared. The crowd started shouting, calling for a fight. At first, the host tried to laugh it off, assuming that the guest simply wanted to make comments. But he also reminded that a public scandal could affect their future destiny, leaving them alone. But Danfu said that everyone was making too much noise. After that, the audience became quiet. The host asked why the new participant had come, and he noted that if he had known in advance, he would have greeted her properly, calling her Miss Laziness. The girl replied that she doesn't like large crowds of people and counted off 10 seconds. Then panic set in. The crowd screamed and began to scatter. The screaming and running emptied the hall in an instant. The presenter turned to the girl, trying to understand what was going on. She demanded to see all the information about Luigi. It turned out that he only had a paper level. Having received the information, she confirmed it and, without delay, suggested continuing the show, pretending that she was not there. Then she disappeared, as if dissolving into thin air. The girl with red lips wondered if she had really noticed this guy, and the presenter froze in place. The executioner raised the axe, and the host asked if she was going to feud with the film crew. Danfu, full of determination, declared that no one would stop her today. The center of events is the main city of online games, known as the City of Hate. Dali stood next to the huge gates, angry and annoyed that he was sent here because of that guy. Behind him, a man screamed, a tongued monster from a parallel level who threatened to eat him. The monster laughed, saying that he could only attack if he disobeyed. Dali, scared and apologetic, realized that all the NPCs in this village are aggressive monsters who do not consider players as humans. He dreamed of becoming a master one day. The trials are complete. Death Train, Bloody Bell Tower, Ancient Ambush, and Winter's Approach are all strong. But not everyone is capable of passing high-level tests. Suddenly the entry, Do Not Disturb Without Killing, Cruel, appeared. Completed. Someone passed the Cruel level test. Congratulations to Traveler Ludgie on completing the brutal level mission Unkillable Do Not Disturb. The count is in progress. Main quest completed. No hidden quests. Overall rating excellent. Reward 5,000 points. Bonus Purple Treasure Chest. Due to the high difficulty of the quest, your level has been increased to level 3, and you have also received 2 attribute values. Traveler Luigi, you have passed the Cruel Level 3 trial. The system gives you an additional reward. The reward is 10 spirit points. Congratulations on completing the challenge. You can return to the real world at any time or begin exploring the area on your own for an hour. You have chosen to conduct independent research. Since you are at the top of the table, you have been automatically teleported to the main city of players, the City of Hatred. The arm has recovered. It seems that everything that happens in missions stays in missions. Injuries do not carry over to the outside. This is the so-called City of Hate. It is not much different from the previous safety zone. First, it's better to see what the purple chest is. Demonic Affinity. Level, purple. Cost, all SP remains, HP becomes 1, and does not recover during the entire duration of the skill. Effect. Attracting Evil. Allows you to enter a state of demonization. The duration of the effect is equal to the value of spiritual power. Cooldown. Can be used once per day. Note. Slight negative effect. This skill seems to be life-threatening. Regardless, it needs some training. After all, it is a skill too. Training for the skill Demonic Affinity is complete. Now, Luigi thought, let's continue. Equipment is a ferocious ripper. Class is purple. Attack power is strong. Special effect is a bad omen. This weapon is infected with the breath of living creatures. Cruel level. Causes its own HP to decrease by 1% per second. At the same time, it causes a panic effect in creatures below the cruel level, a special effect explosion with this thing. The defenses of creatures below the cruel level become invisible to you, and the defenses of creatures of the cruel level are reduced by half. A special effect crusher. This thing can absorb the soul power of killed creatures and strengthen its own soul. For every creature killed, the attack power increases by 20%, and the HP loss rate increases by 1%. This thing is really fierce, Luigi thought. Current stat panel. Level 3. Gender. Human attack. Power. Very weak. Defense. Low. Spiritual resistance. Normal speed. Limited perception. Low primary attributes. Strength. 2. Dexterity. 2. Body. 5. Perception. 2. Spirit. 13. Intensity rating, parallel level. This is my current stat bar, Luigi thought. He picked up the sword he had picked up. HP was indeed dropping continuously, he thought. A fierce erosion. Level 3. Human race. Attack power is strong. Armor is low. Spiritual resistance is normal. Speed is limited. Perception is low. Attributes: Strength 2, Dexterity 2, Constitution 5, Perception 2, Spirit 13. Intensity rating, parallel best. It looks pretty good, but to use this weapon you will need a lot of blood restoration medicine and a lot of other pills. Suddenly a voice came from behind. "Hey, you there!" It was a loud-tongued monster who laughed when he noticed the new toy. Luigi got angry. This is the breath of hatred. He swung his sword and asked, "Hey, what's wrong with you?" The monster immediately covered his head and shouted that he would leave, apologizing for the offense, after which he ran away. Luigi thought that the problem was with this thing and decided to put the sword away for now. Then Dali approached him and offered friendship, waving his hand. Luigi asked if this was the equipment seller. Dali, angry, replied that it was him and that Luigi had greatly offended him, which is why he ended up in this village. Luigi apologized, explaining that last time was his first game and he was a newbie. The newcomer, as a newcomer, could become the most wanted criminal in the security zone, Dali asked. Luigi replied that he didn't know himself. He just came and immediately received a hint about the search. He just finished the rookie test, and he wanted to ask someone about this world. Dali said that Luigi was really unlucky and agreed to tell everything. This world consists of several safe zones that have already been mastered, and 4 areas: paper, parallel, strong, and cruel levels. The safe zone is a place that is carefully guarded by the system. Even if you die, there will be no losses, and you can carry out trading operations. Paper level area, low risk. There are monsters here. Thanks to them, you can pass the tests. The death penalty is light. Loss of personal items. Parallel, semi-controlled. Strong monsters, equipment, and items of green class, they can be sold. If you die, you will lose all items. Strong, low defense. Terrible monsters of fierce level. The best players can pass this area, for items of blue class can rob. If you die in a strong level trial, you lose everything. Therefore, you should choose a dungeon to play in any case, not an area that is clearly beyond your strength. Players who completed high-level boss dungeons were able to pass customs by paying a huge amount of money. "And the area is of a brutal level?" asked Luigi. "So far, no one has been able to pass it because it is an area that the system does not control at all," Dali said. "The area of the cruel level produces purple-class legendary items, but if you die there, your body in the real world will also die. The zone is in a forbidden area. It is impossible to get into the dungeon of a cruel level through the portal. Many want to go there, but they cannot find the way. So I highly doubt that that lunatic at the top of the table actually passed the test of a strong level area. It's unrealistic." "That's it," Luigi realized. "Not to mention the brutal level area. Do you realize where you are now?" Dali asked. "This city is a strong level, not a safe zone at all. If you die here, you will have a lot of trouble. But if you manage to successfully complete the task, the hatred indicator will decrease, and you can return to the safe zone. Dali has only 20 points. He will leave soon. Luigi is a newbie. He probably has a lower score." "Yeah, that's a really nice number," Luigi said. "The hate factor is endless. The other world, the city of hatred. In the capital of hatred, chaos and disorder reign. Here, the more insidious a person is, the more honorable his position. Those who were sent here for a trivial reason are considered worthless, forced to carry out various assignments just to get out as quickly as possible. The mummy, calling out to passers-by, grabbed a guy who was trying to pass by. He resisted, hoping to be released, but the mummy pierced him through and through. She made it clear that everyone who passed by was obliged to buy something. The locals in this place clearly had no sympathy for people. In order to survive, it was necessary to behave discreetly and not attract attention to oneself. Dali reminded him that he simply had to do the tasks conscientiously. When he turned around, Luigi had already disappeared. It turned out that he was standing at the entrance to the store. He realized with relief that he had finally found the right place. Dali became scared when he realized where Luigi was heading. He tried to stop him, fearing that if the monsters noticed him, everything would end badly. But it was too late. Luigi heard the greeting and went inside. Dali was only surprised, considering such behavior madness. Luigi found himself inside. The goblin owner of the shop addressed him, surprised to see a human in front of him. Luigi, without hesitation, expressed his desire to purchase a series of recovery tools. The goblin named the price, 500 points per bottle, noting that it was a special offer. Luigi pointed out that the regular price was only 50, to which the goblin explained with a grin, for humans, the cost was 10 times higher. He laughed, and then warned that it was too late to leave. Luigi walked to the door and closed it. The goblin became wary when he replied that he had no intention of leaving. The tension increased, and the goblin became afraid. Suddenly, 2 blows rang out. The goblin was startled. He felt the breath of evil before he was cut in half. Luigi was approaching, an aura of death emanating from him. The goblin screamed, demanding that they not come closer, claiming that he was the owner of the store, and if he died, the mayor of the city would not leave it unpunished. Luigi calmly asked if the mayor really allowed goods to be sold at 10 times the price. The goblin hesitated, unable to find what to answer. Seeing the approaching scissor sword, he screamed in fear. Luigi offered a deal, all goods at a 10% discount. He asked if he was doing the right thing. The goblin agreed in a panic, begging not to kill him. As Luigi left the store, a polite, "Thank you, come again," was heard from behind him. Luigi looked around and, as if making excuses, said that it was just self-defense. Then he looked into his backpack. Inside there were 20 pieces of health potions, elixirs, and spirits, all of which he acquired for only 200 points. In addition, among the things there was one particularly valuable item, a cloak, which originally cost 8,000 points, but he got it for 800. It was an equipment called a ghost cloak type, armor, quality, blue, defense, normal. He had 4 crowns, a passive special effect, hidden evil, allowing you to block the breath of evil, but only against high-level creatures. Active special effect, facelessness. When activated, you can release the entire power of the item at once, creating smoke, through which it is impossible to see the owner, even for creatures of a cruel level. After all the purchases, Luigi had 4,500 points left. "I like this place," Luigi thought, smiling. Real world, night. There was a line at the checkout in the store. A bald man approached the counter and took a pack of milk chocolate. There is something that should interest him. He walked from the store. There will be no more friendly relations with the elders. There will only be the accompaniment of the daughter. Meng Xiaohua. Someone passed the dungeon of the cruel level. He fed the dog. The strong level trial, Death Train, was completed by player Meng Xiaohua. Dumbfounded by what he saw, Dali watched as Luigi walked out of the store. The phantom cloak is the treasure of this establishment, the price of which must be no less than 80,000 points. He couldn't believe his eyes, how many points he had. Luigi replied that the seller was good and gave him a discount. Dali was amazed. If he had known, he would not have missed such an opportunity either. According to him, everything is usually twice as expensive at that merchant. He himself used to have to buy one bottle of potion for 500 points. This is definitely a local tyrant who deliberately behaved stupidly, hiding his true intentions. Dolly felt that he would become rich if he was with such a person. Maybe he would take him with him to the dungeon in the future. Hope strengthened in his thoughts. He asked if they could continue to communicate. Ludgy refused, saying that he did not need younger brothers. Dolly was indignant. How can he say such a thing? But, quickly changing his tone, he called himself a younger brother. And even went further. Maybe he will immediately become a son. Kneeling before Ludgy, he said, "We will have a strong relationship, like between a real son and father." Ludgy sat down next to him. Dolly's impudence was unexpected. He wanted to be in touch. Ludgy touched the seal. The seals lit up. Traveler Dolly was added as a friend. Now he can send messages. The player's name turned out to be Ludgy. Dolly disappeared. Travelers can contact each other. Time spent in this world has ended. Return to the real world in 10 seconds. Ludgy's time has also expired. Real world. Night. 24 hours left until the next test. Ludgy stood on the roof in his pajamas. He had spent 2 hours in another world, but in reality, only 12 minutes had passed. The clock read 1:10. The life restoration potion gave a small 30% health restoration, and it was actually possible to bring it with me. He drank the potion and threw away the empty flask, which broke. Then I walked down the street. Nearby was the Heart of Buddha Charity Foundation. The shelter across the street was noisy. He glanced at the city at night. Brother Lee came to the orphanage. The children greeted him joyfully, but were surprised that he brought treats, because recently he had been coming empty-handed. He handed out candy. He explained that it had nothing to do with the holiday. It was just that there was hope. He found a rich patron who could help. The children doubted it. They reminded him that he had already spoken about a rich woman before, who eventually turned out to be an enemy, and he himself had to pay for the treatment. Brother Lee responded irritably, pulling their ears, explaining that without money it was impossible to feed so many children. At this moment, his attention was drawn to a passerby in pajamas, Ludgy. His face seemed familiar to Brother Lee. He approached the hospital. There were 2 nurses standing at the entrance. They said they had been looking for him all day but hadn't done any tests. Ludgy said he'd just gone out for some air. After all, they couldn't cure him with medication anyway. And now everything depends on fate. He added that he would walk to his ward himself. And he doesn't need an escort, citing outdated rules. The nurses noted with regret that he was in a good mood. He also looked quite healthy, but in fact, he had a serious illness. He began to open the door, feeling how each time the illusions became more and more real. When the door swung open, he froze. Miss Sloth was lying on his bed. She turned to him and calmly said that he was back, as if nothing unusual had happened. He looked at her naked body parts in surprise, but remained calm. She lay on his bed, engrossed in a video game. He thought that his illness seemed to be progressing. He walked up to the table, opened the cabinet, and took the pills. This hallucination seemed the most unreal of all that had happened since the onset of brain problems. A devil who can't even pass the first level of the 7 deadly sins. She lost again and looked upset. He took the pills again and noted to himself that it should disappear in about a minute. He came closer, the thoughts spinning in his head. If this is a hallucination, then how real is it? He gently touched her shoulder, her chest, then checked her horns. A strange feeling, as if they were real. He touched her breast and touched it again and again. "Did you touch it?" she asked emotionlessly. The warm surface, the texture, the resistance, everything seemed convincing. He looked at his pills again. If even tactile sensations had become part of the illusion, the disease was clearly progressing. All he could do was watch what was happening, trying to determine where reality ended and distorted perception began. The window swung open, letting in a cold draft. A light breeze caught the curtains, and they swirled in the air. The hospital corridors were empty and quiet. The nurses hurried out into the hallway, lighting their way with a flashlight. The electricity went out, leaving the room in darkness. The pillow with the clubs hung in the air, like a call for attention. Miss Lazy was adamant, ready to use force if the behavior did not change. He knelt down, trying to calm the tense atmosphere, calling her female knight, trying to diffuse the situation. He asked for a chance to pass, pointing to the game. The light suddenly turned on. A voice behind the door asked about his condition, to which he replied that he was sleeping, adding that he was in his pajamas. The nurse reacted calmly. He started playing. Len lost, and congratulations on the victory were heard. She noticed that she now looked like this in the human world and thought about feeding the game's creators to her three-headed dog. Luigi noted that her appearance in the game is not bad, especially compared to her previous appearance in Elden Ring. Luigi noted that, with the exception of some perverts, people imagine something terrible when they hear the unknown, but not beauties. Miss Sloth praised his psychological qualities and stated that he truly deserved to survive his encounter with the source of evil. Many years passed, and Luigi was considered the first of his kind. She explained that everyone before him had awakened the mechanism and died. And this was normal. A newcomer, on his first move, fails to unite with others, and because of the high hatred indicator. A cruel level of testing is inevitable. Despite the fear of death, he showed himself worthy. In the end, she admitted that she was tired. She came to remind that if you don't have self-confidence, it's better not to go to the tests alone. If they pass successfully, they will meet again. He asked to tell what the source of evil meant and whether it was connected with the disease, and also wondered if creatures from her world could penetrate here. She replied that ordinary beings would not be able to pass, but she was an exception for special cases. And she admitted that she herself does not want to attract the attention of the problematic exhibits of this world and plans to stay for a short time. Regarding the source of evil, she advised him to try not to die if he wanted to know the truth. Luigi admitted that he had no arguments for refusing. He noticed that it was left specifically for him and looked closely at the game console. The NT3000 game console was blue quality and was a single-use item that would disappear after use. Its effect was that it belonged to an extremely inept player who, after numerous failures, finally defeated the final boss. Such persistence deserved respect. After activation, the owner was given the opportunity to call this player for help once. Luigi looked at the device with suspicion. He realized that this was some kind of substitution. And yet, wasn't it shameful to do this, he thought? Welcome to Afterlife Express Delivery. All employees must strictly adhere to the following rules. The parcel must be delivered directly into the hands of the customer. If the customer refuses to accept the parcel, you are obliged to convince him by any means necessary. Delivery time is critical. Delays are unacceptable. In case of customer dissatisfaction, the delivery person bears full responsibility. It is strictly forbidden to abandon the order or leave the delivery location early. Workers are strictly forbidden to rebel against the director. We wish you a pleasant and productive work. A message appeared. Traveler Luja. The third level begins testing the multiplayer mode. Difficulty: same as hard reward. Treasure chest. Quality: blue. Warning: dying in a strong challenge will result in a complete loss of levels, skills, and items. Compatibility complete. Level loaded. Express delivery. Afterlife. Enjoy the game. It has been detected that this is your first time participating in a multiplayer mode. By default, it is anonymous. You can change the display ID at any time. Luigi stood in front of the door. The screen displayed the task. Please take your employee handbook with you and proceed to the staff area before the end of the bell. He took the reference book for express delivery of the afterlife. When he opened the doors, he was surprised by the number of participants. There really were a lot of people in this multiplayer mode. Music was playing from the speaker. There were many players standing in the middle of the spacious hall, and everyone immediately turned their attention to him. The doors closed behind him. He walked quietly deeper, trying not to disturb others. Some moved away. He apologized, moving forward. One of the men noticed his level and was surprised. Level 3, and the dungeon was of a strong class, no other than a system failure. A slight murmur ran through the hall. Someone suggested that usually in such modes there is a master who leads the others, and perhaps Luigi is not here by chance. The door swung open with a kick. A player with the nickname Dragon, Mad Blade, Jian-kun, level 10, entered the room. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of the others. His panel displayed the status of a union member, accessible only from a certain level. The crowd immediately realized that they were dealing with the master of the group. There was a feeling of relief among the participants. With such a leader, the chances of passing the test became higher. The player turned off anonymous mode, and the interface confirmed his identity. He reminded everyone of the difficulty of the dungeon and took over the leadership. The participants readily expressed their support, determined to follow his instructions. The crowd became animated, enthusiastic, seeing a strong ally. He looked at the newcomers with skepticism, noticing their confusion and fear. Among them, his gaze lingered on Luigi. The level of the third participant puzzled the master. Luigi felt a close look on himself and was surprised. He was noticed. Kun turned to Luigi, surprised by his low level. He wondered how a third-level player would even be on such a test. After all, such participants should have been in much simpler scenarios. Luigi just shrugged, writing it off as chance or bad luck. Kun did not develop the topic, simply asking not to interfere and to observe his actions. He walked forward through the crowd, but the next moment, a bullet hit his head. Silence fell. People in the room did not immediately realize what had happened. The message in the interface confirmed the death. The traveler, Jian-kun, was killed. Then a new character with a gun in his hands spoke into the room. He introduced himself as an employee of the express delivery service Afterlife, and he said that he had punished the violator of the third rule from the handbook. The crowd began to panic. An experienced player, a member of the union, had just been instantly killed. The new character calmly explained that actions against the director were strictly prohibited, and reminded that all of this was clearly spelled out in the handbook. He suggested that everyone familiarize themselves with the rules if they had not already done so. The atmosphere was tense. The test had only just begun, but it was already clear how serious each violation would be. The meaning of the 6th article of the handbook. The director really had the right to immediately remove any employee for disobedience. The man with the revolver confirmed this, explaining that their task was to fulfill 3 orders from the directory. The tasks varied in difficulty. One was blue in quality, relatively simple. The other 2 were red, significantly more dangerous. Completing all 3 meant a chance to survive and leave the delivery point. The mission was activated. The main goal was to get out alive. Some players tried to stay calm, telling themselves that if the task is not difficult, there will be no problems. At that moment, a notification came. The traveler Lucian received an order. The contents of the delivery are a slap in the face. The recipient is a strong-level boss, a hell wolf. The player, realizing the essence of the task, began to scream in despair. He understood that this was practically suicide. He tried to refuse, but immediately a new message appeared. Traveler Lucian was killed. The man with the revolver reminded everyone that, according to Article 5 of the handbook, Employees do not have the right to refuse orders. Lu Xun's body disappeared. The other participants in the test realized, in this mode, the slightest mistake could cost lives. "Don't forget," the boss said. He reminded that he does not show tolerance for rule breakers. As long as the others followed the instructions, they had nothing to fear. He announced the start of the test. There was little time. Whispers began in the room as participants discussed how difficult the orders were, a task that almost certainly led to death. Then the voice of another participant was heard. He confidently declared his acceptance of the new task. A message appeared. Time Traveler Tian has successfully accepted the order. The contents were dinner. The address is the rotating skyscraper, room 306. The player, holding a golden box in his hands, headed towards the exit. The others watched him, thinking that he had slipped away, cleverly intercepting a successful task. Luigi noted his quick reaction. According to the handbook, once you receive a mission, you can't refuse it. But there was no mention of interception being prohibited. This turned out to be a loophole. One of the players approached Luigi and suggested that he look in the directory. Luigi hinted that this was the same Xiaomengxin. Luigi's level was low, so his possible death was of little concern to anyone. The second player proposed a deal, an exchange for a red task, one of the most dangerous. The intrigue intensified. The situation in the hall became tense. Luigi thought for a moment after hearing the exchange proposal. A recent episode came to mind. He was playing a game with Miss Sloth. Then he asked her an important question. Is it possible, by sharing evil, to pass a test whose difficulty is lower than the level of cruelty? She confirmed that it was possible, adding that participation itself could affect the difficulty balance. A test intended to be parallel may be elevated to a strong level due to its intervention. However, she warned that even in such cases, he, unlike others, may face particular difficulties. The words sounded like a warning, a reminder that trying to get around the system doesn't always make things easier. Luigi showed the red task. The player opposite was surprised. The others looked with suspicion and alarm. He demonstrated the second red task, and the crowd began to whisper and retreat. The third red task caused shock. People began to move away, not wanting to have anything to do with it. No one wanted to trade with Luigi. The players turned away and walked out of the building, leaving him alone. The man with the revolver noted that it was rare to receive 3 red quests with such a low level. He said that the efforts would not be enough, but offered to answer one single question. Luigi realized that the system was deliberately encouraging people to refuse difficult tasks through fear and pressure. He asked if the reward for completing red tasks increases compared to blue ones. The man confirmed that the reward was higher, but only for those who could endure it. He explained that the system was created to weed out the weak and to highlight the truly capable players. The man warned that being too visible could be deadly. The boss explained that successful completion of all 3 red orders would promise serious financial benefits. He noted that a newcomer with such tasks causes them relief and surprise at the same time. The boss laughed, acknowledging Luigi's confidence and hidden potential. He confirmed that the rewards depended on the difficulty of the tasks. He doubted whether Luigi would be able to survive the test. Luigi refused to be friends with the revolver and reminded about the 1-question limit. The man laughed and took off his hat in respect to the surviving traveler. He wished him luck and hinted at further adventures. Luigi walked out of the building into the darkness, the light blinding his eyes. The guy with a bald spot on his forehead suggested exchanging orders. Men explained that he had 3 blue tasks, as opposed to Luigi's red ones. Luigi considered the offer. A kid with that level won't be able to handle 3 red tasks, men said, offering to help. Luigi thought about the offer, recalling the name Meng Xiaohuang, level 15. This warrior challenged a strong-level dungeon and was known and respected. Men demanded a solution, promising to take care of Luigi in this test. Luigi held out the assignments, but suddenly tore them away after receiving confirmation of successful acceptance. The man became indignant and tried to hit him, but Luigi deftly pulled out a pair of scissors. He was surprised, and Luigi asked what he wanted to know, holding the scissors in his hands. The man immediately realized that it was easy to negotiate with a person of Luigi's level. He thought that the effect was related to the cruel level equipment. Luigi smiled, saying that there was a misunderstanding. High-level players know the goods. They laughed. Men thought that still waters run deep, and Luigi thought that the bastard knew how to keep his nose to the wind. Man said goodbye to Luigi, admitting that he was a tough nut to crack. He decided to look for another one to get a better reward. People have appeared around Maine who are ready to eliminate him. Meng asked that even if the tests were transformed into strong ones, they would not leave him alone. Someone from the company reminded that no one can go against the three elders. If you die during the test, your strength will be wasted, he said, and went on the attack. Suddenly, an iron hand grabbed the attacker by the head, surprising the others. Meng held the boy's head, questioning his lack of strength. He let go of the boy, who flew down and began to disappear. One of the group noted the power of his mechanical force. Meng happily said that the red task was their reward. A message with expanded order content appeared. Delivery item: shabby doll, recipient, strong boss, psycho. The delivery address is Twilight, Villa 169. Luigi stood at the gate, holding the doll, thinking it was a joke. The doll was an explanation. She was lost, and finding her meant fulfilling the order. The absence of the package made Luigi wonder about the seriousness of Hangchen Express's work. They don't do their job well, Luigi thought, shaking out his doll. Luigi approached the address, feeling the strange atmosphere around him. He thought that crazy people really lived here. He pressed the button and announced that he had a package for the crazy lady. A terrifying scream came from inside, causing him to cover his ears. He noted that the reception here was clearly not very friendly. Other players at this time? A task appeared. Deliver food to the address Rotting Pasture. The sheep thanked for the food. The dogs were angry. A male liaison officer was hanging from the ceiling. He was indignant. The order had not yet been completed. The sheep said that there was little food, but the man was right for her. Below, the dogs were jumping on the man, trying to bite him. New task: deliver the temple bell to Changsheng Temple. Buddha thanked for help. The girl asked if this was gratitude. The man explained that the order was to participate in a burial. The girl was surrounded by monks. She was needed for the burial. A message appeared about a low-level order. Deliver a love letter to the Garden of Confinement. The girl took the letter and thanked him. The task was considered completed. She said it was the first time she had received a love letter. The man laughed, thinking it had all gone smoothly. A new task has appeared. Deliver a weight loss product to the Hungwan Fitness Center. The man stood at the entrance and happily met the parcel. The courier handed over the box. The task was completed. Low-level orders are really easy. The courier was happy. Then the system notified, Courier Hungwan completed the 5th low-level order, also the 7th, but failed the high-level 4th. The conclusion is that low-level orders are indeed simpler. Luigi stood in front of the gate. His HP was almost at 0. A high-level order knocked off 80% of his HP with a single roar, which surprised him. He took out the potion and restored his health. Approaching the intercom, he tried to call the residents. The speaker was making wheezing and unintelligible sounds. The voice seemed feminine and rather soft to him. He realized that he had to go inside himself, but the gates were locked. Luigi looked around, then took out his scissors. He struck the goal, sending it flying. He walked through the rubble and entered inside. Luigi opened the door, introducing himself as a courier from Hongwan. He was struck by the amount of rubbish in the room. A girl was sitting on the sofa, staring at the switched-off TV. He held out the doll, but the girl asked for silence. According to her, Smiley, had just fallen asleep. In her hands was a tattered stuffed animal, which she treated with touching care. Lu Ji attempted to hand over the delivery, but the girl became wary. Her gaze darted from the scarecrow to the doll. She noticed the resemblance to the lost Xiao Xiao doll. Suddenly, she had a doubt. Isn't Xiao Xiao in her arms? So she's lost, she's looking for her, or she's in her arms. Anxiety appeared in her eyes. Her thoughts became confused. The girl began to convince herself that the courier was trying to deceive her. She accused him of wanting to steal the child. The laughter suddenly turned to rage. She threw the scarecrow away, screamed, and began attacking Lu Ji. The girl with the knife was chasing Lu Ji. His health was running out. He drank the potion quickly, trying to recover. She kept interrupting him, giving him no peace. Her screams and threats grew louder. There was a door ahead, the only chance for salvation. Lu Ji managed to run up and slam it in front of his pursuer's nose. The girl was pounding on the door, calling for someone named Xiao. He stood behind the closed door, fighting panic. There was knocking and shouting behind the door. Lu Ji realized that the door would not hold for long. He decided to look for another exit. He entered a room that was different from the previous ones. The walls were covered with children's drawings. One of them had an inscription about mom and happiness. The calendar in the room marked 100 days without Xiao Xiao. Lu Ji realized that they had been looking for her for a long time. On another sheet it said, 2,000 days without hope. A note advertising Jingyuan Express fell out of the calendar. Lu Ji thought the boss had gone too far in his deception. A knife was thrust into the door, and the sound of metal scraping against wood was heard. Lu Ji thought the woman had completely lost her mind. In order to receive the courier normally, he had to calm down. The room seemed unusual and impressive. He noticed a wardrobe in the corner and was surprised. There were children's dresses in it. A new idea came into Lu Ji's head. A hand slammed into the door. The woman was furious. She screamed, demanding that Xiao Xiao be returned. Suddenly, her gaze fell on Lu Ji in a childish pink dress. He extended his hands towards the woman. The woman stretched out her arms to him and said that he was her Xiao Xiao. She was surprised to see how much she had grown. Despite everything, she expressed love and joy that she was alive. The woman hugged Lu Ji tightly, confirming her feelings. But he rejected his mother's words, looking into her eyes. The woman was perplexed and confused. He snatched the knife from her hand. Drops of blood flew around. He pierced his stomach, trying to prove that her daughter was long gone. He asked if she wanted to protect him. The woman screamed in horror, begging him to stop. She remembered. The girl was lying in a clearing, drawing with colored pencils. A doll was sitting next to her. Suddenly someone came up from behind. The man asked her if he could ask a question. The girl was scared. Drops of blood splashed onto the doll. Mother called Xiao to dinner. Her eyes were full of horror. There was a large pool of blood and a knife in the clearing. The mother held her daughter, but it was Lu Ji in a pink dress, screaming in horror. A message appeared. Touch of evil and hypnotic speech activated. Lu Ji asked Mad Lady to wake up from her madness. Previously, there was a sign next to the door that read, "Welcome to Hungvan Express. We'll deliver whatever you need." The boss used to pronounce the company's slogan, "If you want something, we'll deliver it. And if you don't know what you want, we'll create it." The woman asked about her daughter with despair in her voice, describing her as short, wearing a pink dress, named Xiao Xiao. The boss confirmed that he saw her. The woman begged him to tell her everything he knew. He reminded her that the company's services are paid, and the price can be high. So high that not everyone will dare to pay. She fell to her knees and assured that she was ready for anything. Then the man used magic. He asked her to relax and give him her sanity. In exchange, he promised to return his daughter. His hand reached for her head. He was sure she would become a regular customer. She asked not to stop. She will do everything to get her daughter back. Lu Ji stood before her. The woman desperately fought against hypnosis. She muttered that Xiao Xiao had simply left and begged not to wake her up. Lu Ji realized that self-deception had become a refuge for her, created by someone else. He walked away, watching as the woman, like a doll, continued to repeat the same words. Suddenly she heard her daughter's voice. Xiao Xiao appeared before her eyes, but in fact, it was Lu Ji in a child's dress, she realized. He congratulated the woman on regaining most of her sanity and cognitive functions. He said she had been awake for a long time. She just didn't want to admit it. The woman weakly asked if she was really awake. The mad lady was handed a doll, a delivery from Master Hung Wan Express. Lu Ji explained that this gift was not just an object, but a message, the meaning of which she would have to understand on her own. He reminded her that there were many things in the world that could fill her life, besides illusions and dependence on someone else's will. Handing her the doll, he wished her a good review and left. The system recorded the successful completion of the task called Lost Doll. Lu Ji was promoted to the status of excellent worker. His pre-order rewards increased by 100%, and the number of negative reviews from customers decreased. He was pleased with the result and was about to leave. However, a voice came from behind. A woman asked him to answer one question. Was her daughter alive? Lu Ji didn't give a direct answer, but only suggested that she see for herself. He pulled back the curtain, revealing a view of the street. The woman went to the window and whispered her daughter's name. Then she put the doll on the window. "Wait for me," she said to the doll. At that moment, the statuette fell and broke. Its head flew off to the side. The mad lady's quest was considered complete. The company boss, watching what was happening, dryly commented that it was a pity because she was a good client. Then he said that it was time to move on to the second act of this play. "Speak, Xiao Xiao," the boss said. A child's cry came from behind the door. At the Niap Fitness Center, a client opened a box containing a weight loss product. What was inside was not a pack of pills, but hot food. Chicken, French fries, a hamburger. Steam rose from the food. The woman swallowed hard. Saliva ran down her chin. She stuck her head into the box and began to eat greedily. Her body began to rapidly increase. Her eyes turned red. Her face distorted. Her consciousness became clouded. Food was the only thing she thought about now. The human form was disappearing. All that remained was thirst. She looked at the courier. There was no longer any reason in her gaze, only hunger. The courier stepped back. The creature moved towards him. It muttered about the taste of food and hunger. The courier turned and ran. The creature screamed and ran after him. A message appeared. A strong enemy, the hungry walker. At the same time, in the garden of confinement, another courier was lying on the floor, opposite the girl with his face covered. He tried to find out what she was planning. The girl watched silently. A light wind moved the fabric on her face. She came closer. A message appeared. A strong enemy, the jade-faced bride. The men fell to the ground one after another. Bodies were strewn everywhere. Tension hung in the air. The girl raised her hand. The girl stood among them, holding a letter in her hands. The paper was covered with a repeated phrase, "Pig, die, you vile creature." The courier lay on the floor, shaking with fear. The question in her gaze did not require words. The courier shook his head, denying. He tried to justify himself, but there were no words. The girl glanced at the letter, then at him. There was no doubt in her gesture. If he didn't know who it was from, she didn't need him. The courier screamed. The floor turned red with blood. A message appeared. Warning: some customers have left bad reviews. Complaints appeared in the system. Traveler Jian Xian died. Traveler Hu La died. The list went on. Meng watched the proceedings. He sighed. Low-level orders had their own difficulties. If he had completed more high-level ones, he would have received serious bonuses. Alas, so far only one complex order has been at his disposal. The screen displayed information about the new task: delivery item, love, recipient, strong boss, name, Crypt King. Meng studied the data. It was an unusual order, but there was something to it. Delivering love to a powerful enemy sounded interesting. He was just beginning to get the hang of the task when suddenly something moved in the bushes. Men tensed. Everything looked too calm. Obviously, an ambush. Meng peered into the shifting bushes, preparing himself for a potential monster. His fingers tightened. He concentrated. But instead of a predatory roar or a sudden attack, he heard a muffled voice. Luigi came out of the bushes, pulling off his pink dress. He grumbled discontentedly, complaining about the size of the skirt and the thinness of the material. He looked not like a monster, but like a man who had just come out of an absurd mission. Luigi turned around when he saw Man and froze. They both looked at each other for a moment, trying to process the situation. Meng looked from Luigi to the dress, then back at him. His head still didn't add up. This was a strange ordeal. Luigi waved his hand. There was no monster here. Men's attention was drawn to the sign above Luigi's head, the mark of an excellent worker. He had completed the red order. Luigi replied that he had encountered a possessed person in women's clothing who tried to outdo him, but he still won. Meng asked if Luigi had any more such tasks. Luigi offered to try himself, holding out a pink dress. Meng declined. He believed that Luigi had unusual abilities and a strange weapon, and most importantly, that he was one of the few who had passed the cruel level of testing. Meng offered Luigi cooperation, explaining that together they would be able to complete red quests more easily and avoid bad reviews from monsters, who are now more actively tracking down couriers. He emphasized that this is precisely the essence of the dungeon's work. To convince Luigi of the seriousness of his intentions, Meng showed him his order. Luigi carefully studied the piece of paper. The delivery item was light, and the recipient was a powerful boss, the Crypt King. They had the same recipient. Luigi noted that the King of Light was quite an interesting recipient. In the end, they decided to stick together. At that moment, a fat man's scream came from the bushes. The smell of food woke the monster. Meng warned Luigi that he would not be tracked, and suggested that they head to the mission site while he tried to deal with the monster. Luigi paused in the bushes and asked him to wait. Meng was surprised and asked what he was planning. Luigi offered to follow him, hoping that they could get past the enemy without taking damage. All the monsters in the trial were strong, and without a plan, it was impossible to defeat them. Meng noticed that Luigi was still nearby, but he was in no hurry to reveal his secrets. Meng asked if he was okay, and offered to leave, and if he couldn't handle it, he would come up with something himself. Luigi replied that everything was fine, and suggested that they go together. Meng was surprised by this decision. The monster, smelling the meat, spewed threats and drooled, demanding prey. Suddenly, a laughing Luigi in a cloak appeared in front of him, holding a pair of scissors. Meng was lying next to him. Luigi began to impersonate the monster, and declared that it was his prey, which greatly frightened the fat man. He tried to justify himself by saying that he was just passing by, and quickly ran away. Luigi noted that the effect of the evil spirit cloak actually worked well. The evil spirit's cloak had a facelessness effect. When activated, it summoned invisible smoke that hid the ferocious creatures from view for 10 minutes, with the possibility of reuse only after 24 hours. After the threat had passed, Luigi suggested that Man stand up. Meng admitted that it was not worth keeping such dangerous people as enemies and offered friendship. Luigi accepted, and he asked if Meng had any medicine for blood, which surprised him. The wind blew. Meng explained that in this test, The monster would go crazy and hunt down the traveler if the order was not completed properly. Even though the orders were simple, they always resulted in bad reviews. Meng said that he used to come here with old friends, and back then everyone preferred low-level orders. Eventually, they were surrounded by insane monsters, and he was forced to flee without completing the test. He suggested that taking on difficult orders was the best way to cross that line. Luigi asked if he was ready, to which Meng replied that he was. They smiled. The footsteps of the fleeing people became louder and louder. The couriers were panicking and trying to figure out what was going on, since they had already completed the order. But the digger, a powerful monster, was approaching them, and everything went wrong. After completing the order, he went crazy. One of the couriers noticed that something was wrong with the delivered items. The order turned out to be for the delivery of pesticides, and this caused horror in everyone. A running man appeared ahead. The couriers hoped that if the monster turned on him, they would be safe. Ming rushed straight at the couriers, causing them to be surprised and bewildered. Why was he taking such a risk? He ran away from the monster, screaming for help. Luigi, wearing a cloak and holding scissors, ran after him, laughing and encouraging his ally. The couriers hid in panic in the bushes when the digger monster approached and also hid behind the leaves, frightened by the situation. Luigi didn't stop, chasing after Man and shouting threats. The couriers, looking out from their hiding place, saw how the monster focused on them and began to attack. The couriers screamed for help as they ran away. All the creatures they encountered retreated. Was Luigi really that scary? Men asked. The fierce corrosion reached 25%. Luigi drank the healing elixir, preparing for battle. Luigi laughed, saying that maybe that was the thing about handsome guys, urging Man not to run away. Man wondered if this was an ordinary person. At this moment, a message appeared about the completion of the order for the delivery of temple bells to Changsheng Temple. This was followed by a bonus order notification, congratulating him on a job well done and encouraging him to keep up the good work. The girl was surprised that more than half of the resources were spent on completing the order, and it was not the most difficult of the tasks, but it could lead to a promotion, which made her rethink her previous strategy. Then there was a proposal to hire Ms. Zhou Peng at a higher price to fulfill orders, and she wondered if this man was the elder's subordinate. As expected, Ms. Zhou Peng had completed high-level tasks on her own. Her strength was beyond doubt. One of the players confirmed her opinion, marveling at Peng's strength, to which she only replied reservedly that everything was more or less as she approached the group. Then she asked what they had brought this time. The girl in the group replied that it was the blue suit, the same one that was supposed to kill Meng Xiaohua. This made Peng curious, and she wondered if San Lao was really that angry, if Meng Xiaohua had really managed to annoy him. The girl noted that in fact there are offers that are much more generous than the current orders. Intrigued, Zhou Peng asked what this was all about. Then the interlocutor said that they needed to find a person who had passed a cruel test, and the reward for this was twice the payment. Peng, after listening, immediately refused. Finding people was not her profile. She reminded that she can eliminate targets, but not find them, and always works on an advance payment basis. However, the girl continued. She remembered that Peng was familiar with Meng, and, perhaps, for the sake of old friendship, she would be ready to reconsider her conditions a little. Peng thought about it and remembered that she actually had a pretty good relationship with Meng. They had even once gone through a difficult test together. Peng thought for a moment and said that if Meng had not been there then, she would probably have died. In a sense, their relationship was life-threatening. Hearing this, the girl nodded, suggesting that Peng contact her superiors herself to agree on participating in the search. A system message immediately appeared, notifying about the acceptance of a possible new task. Pan squinted. She needed to toss her a coin. When Meng and Luigi arrived at the designated location, Meng noted that this was probably where the Crypt King should be. He admitted that he had no idea who or what was behind that name. Suddenly, a voice was heard. The creature addressed Man, accusing him of insolently invading the Crypt King's territory. A monster jumped out of the tree, disfigured, without one eye, with a furious expression on its face. Luigi recognized him at once. This was the one-eyed creature they had already encountered. The monster reported that the Crypt King hates people. Meng tried to calm him down by saying that he had come on business, to make a delivery, and that he represented the Hung-Wan Express Company. Hearing this, the monster froze slightly, and then confirmed, "The Crypt King wants to return what was taken from him, his eye." Maine was at a loss as to what was being discussed. Then the monster said that there was one episode in the history of the Crypt King. He once enjoyed food, but suddenly he was attacked by a mysterious nomad. He not only took away his eye, but also left him with deep psychological trauma. He was filled with hatred, but did not dare to take revenge, for the nomad had a fearsome bodyguard, superior in strength to anyone the Crypt King knew. Meng frowned. It all sounded ridiculous, and he doubted how a monster could possibly be a bodyguard for a common nomad. The Crypt King, driven by despair and anger, approached Hung-Wan Express with an order to return what was taken from him, his eyes. The monster's voice grew louder and more furious. It demanded that they either return the Crypt King's eye or pay with their own. Meng and Luigi froze in front of the monster as they heard approaching footsteps and voices behind them. Pan and her team emerged from the shadows. They were slightly out of breath, but confident. The team formed a semicircle, blocking the way back. Luigi was wary, not understanding who they were up against. Meng responded without much concern that Peng was more of a friend, except for the possibility of selling out for a good price. Pan nodded without objection, and even admitted that she found such a description somewhat flattering. She then added that this time the order was especially generous, so much so that she wanted to kill Meng. Luigi stepped back, raising his hands. He tried to offer neutrality, claiming that he was just a newbie and had just happened to be there. But Peng only grinned. According to the terms of the order, any of Meng's assistants were also subject to elimination, and Luigi looked too experienced for a newbie. Man sighed. This was all getting a lot more complicated than he'd expected. Luigi slowly pulled down his hood, revealing his face, and stepped forward. There was no fear in his movements, only calm and confidence. The monster froze, as if it sensed the approach of something familiar and dangerous. Pan frowned, not understanding what was happening, and the tension among those present increased. Everyone waited for Luigi to speak, but he only looked straight at the monster, causing it to back away. The monster recognized him. The monster seemed to be trying to deny the thought that had already crept into his mind. Recognition was reflected in his gaze, and then came confusion. The monster froze. Images of the past flashed through its mind, that very collision when it had received a crushing blow. The same man stood before him as then. Only now there was a girl with a cold look next to him. Recognition hit like a hammer blow. The players watched in confusion. One of them wondered why he was charging straight at the monster. Another mockingly commented that Luigi's behavior was a sure way to his death. Laughter was heard everywhere. But Luigi didn't flinch. His gaze pierced the monster, whose anxiety was growing. He already knew that this was not a mistake or an accident. Everything that was happening was a deliberate game. And if he makes a mistake, there may be someone lurking around the corner whose wrath he will not survive. As if resigned, the monster touched Luigi's shoulder. It didn't want to take any risks. The players were stunned by surprise, not understanding what was happening. Everything was turned upside down. Luigi suggested that the king get rid of the people. The monster doubted that there were too many of them. Luigi pointed to the eye, the trophy, the object of revenge, the cause of fear. The monster nodded. The monster hesitated, holding the eye close to itself, to its heart. Luigi spoke easily, as if casually, with a hint of blackmail, but also with real pleasure. He didn't try to persuade, he just made it clear that he had a choice, and the other outcome would be worse. The best one stood nearby, as if he wasn't worried at all. He even joked. He liked the eye. He wouldn't mind getting another one. The system responded. Congratulations. An important express order has been completed. Promotion. Head of HR. Employee effect. Manager's will resistance is activated. Ability to ignore direct orders from Express. The reward for the final trial has been increased by 200%. Luigi has left the decision to the Crypt King. Suddenly, the monster launched a furious attack, stunning all the players around it. They instantly began to warn each other, shouting about the impending danger. Luigi, however, without losing his composure, smiled and waved his hand lightly, encouraging the King of the Crypt and demonstrating confidence in the upcoming fight. The monster struck quickly and accurately, forcing players to dodge and seek protection. The girl, noticing the agility of the monster, expressed surprise and gave the order to Joe to open fire. At that moment, she noticed Pen moving away. The girl tried to get her attention, urging her to pursue. Pen, smiling, wished the others good luck and headed towards her goal. Meanwhile, Mung rushed to attack, and from the powerful blow, Pen was also thrown aside. Pen coughed, surprised by the power of the skill. Main, defending his ally, urged him not to be disturbed. Peng noticed that Mung was showing interest in the situation, which surprised her. Suddenly a doll appeared in front of Main, a straw effigy of a man, a prop. Pen disappeared. Meng always seemed closer to Luigi than just a casual ally. It seemed as if Luigi himself was taking the initiative. Now he got a new task, red level. The order stated the delivery item was laughter, and the recipient was crying. The delivery address was Hlangquan Metro Station. The boss looked closely at the scattered, broken stone figurines on the shelf, thinking about what had happened. The madman was supposed to destroy him, but he didn't. The Avengers' mission was to kill him, but something went wrong. In such performances, unexpected glitches often occurred, which worried the boss. He recalled that the overseer should have threatened the store manager at the express delivery station. However, as the screenwriter of this drama, he believed that the actors should not deviate so much from their roles. The boss's hands slid along the strings of the puppet figures representing the recipients of the packages. Low-level orders with numbers 0.58 and 0.31 remained unfulfilled. On the shelf, only fragments of stones and the energy emanating from the figurines that the boss had inhaled remained. He regretted that the level of an ordinary actor was too weak to carry the matter through to the end. The boss took a deep breath and noticed that someone was losing patience. He reassured him, saying that freedom would come soon. Groans were heard from behind the door. The boss thought for a moment and asked if the other person knew that a warden could exist even in the cruel level area. Now he himself was at the peak of a strong level and was only one step away from entering the realm of the fierce. For this to happen, the fruit had to be ripe enough to be sweet when picked, a condition that has not yet been met. Despite everything, the boss understood that he was forced to stay here and wait. The players were pinned against a tree after a powerful blow. The monster mockingly said that now the travelers knew the price of the king's wrath. Meng squeezed one of the players in his hand. The monster noted Meng's strength and promised that the Crypt King would remember him. Suddenly the monster remembered something. Men noticed this and, alarmed, asked what was happening to him. The monster screamed that the terms of the order stated that if the recipient gets his way, the manager would take over. He spoke about his long and lonely road and mentioned several unfulfilled orders. Men offered to help the monster. He had the second order. At first it was surprised, but then it trusted Man, allowing him to climb on top of it. Meng kissed the monster and tears sparkled in his eyes. His legs trembled. A message appeared on the screen about the completion of the premium order, Delivery of Love, reaching a high level and recognizing Meng as an excellent employee. At the time, the giant insect, the digger, was fighting with other players. Luigi hid around the corner and thought about how the monsters had gone completely crazy. He asked Peng why she was following him and reminded her of her desire to kill Meng Xiaohua. Pen confirmed this, but added that she did not know how Meng was related to Luigi. But she reminded that many players from the top 100 have long since abandoned their moral principles. She emphasized that Meng Xiaohua is a real beast who is willing to do anything to reach new levels. Luigi asked why she was telling him this, and Pen admitted that she wanted to test his worth. Two players who had recently died in the trial appeared in the central square. Both were annoyed to find themselves back on level 1. A correspondence began in the group. One of the girls asked if anyone was still alive. The answers were disappointing. Almost everyone had left. Angered, she remembered Captain Joe and Pan, who were still inside. There was hope that at least everything was okay with Pan, so she decided to write to her. The girl tried to contact Peng, reminding her of the importance of completing the task. However, Peng silently added her to the blacklist. Enraged, the girl attacked one of the players and hit him. The second participant tried to intervene, but it was too late. It was suspected that Pan had deliberately cut them off from contact in order to single-handedly collect all the rewards for completing the mission. The furious girl couldn't believe that Peng, who was one of the top 100 players, blocked her. In her opinion, such players always went towards their goals, not shying away from means, and for the sake of the reward, Peng could well leave the rest behind. She is sure everything needs to be explained to this hysterical woman. At that moment, the couriers ran up. One of them showed a screen with a recording. The video showed the traveler dressed in top-notch equipment. Presumably, it could have been the one who passed the fierce difficulty level. The girl decided that she couldn't miss such an opportunity. A message appeared. President, a major discovery has been made during the testing of the strong level of the Huang Kuang Express. Luigi and Peng ran down the street. Peng chased Luigi, threatening him. The strong level test continued. He jumped over a huge ditch, trying to get away. Peng continued to chase, declaring that she would exchange him for money. Peng reported that the old man was looking for a guy who had passed the fierce level, and a reward of 2 blue suits was promised for his capture. She kept interrogating Luigi, trying to get a reaction out of him. Then, jumping right in front of him, Pan demanded an answer, assuming that he was the same guy. Given his agility, which she said was inferior to her own, Pan was sure he wouldn't escape. When Luigi asked what she was going to do if he told the truth, Pan mentioned that she had an interesting proposal for him. However, she also did not rule out the possibility of simply killing him and taking the reward. Luigi was surprised to notice the weapon in her hands, a sliding gun. Pan clarified that this was not an ordinary weapon, but a spell weapon. It was linked to the weaponsmith's mechanism and included a spell of 3 circles. Without further ado, 3 magical shots were fired straight at Luigi. Luigi felt the effects of the buff. His movement speed increased significantly, and his attack speed increased by 20%. The effect will last for 10 minutes. He was surprised by such a long boost support. Peng, meanwhile, explained why she wasn't trying to kill him. The current situation was related to the PvE mode. If it weren't for the intervention of the old man and the others, they could, she said, have fought side by side as allies breaking through the darkness. Luigi demanded an explanation. Peng admitted that the real reason for her behavior was the limited resources of the association. They can't pay for all the masters. The peculiarity of this dungeon is that no one, no matter how strong, can defeat the boss, until she runs into the warden. And the warden turns out to be him, Luigi. That's why Peng needs his help. Peng coldly pointed out that failure to win was no reason to give up. If you can't defeat your enemy, find a way to escape. A perfect strategy isn't necessary to pass the test, especially for newbies. Luigi struggled to open the heavy doors of the hall. At that moment, tears involuntarily rolled from his eyes. There was something unexpected inside. In the center of the room sat a small imp. He was crying loudly, his howl echoing throughout the empty hall. Suddenly he stood up, let out a piercing cry, and rushed forward with a shout. From around the corner came the scream of a small child monster. Luigi, hearing this, came up and asked him with concern why he was crying. He squatted down in front of the child and tried to make him laugh, but the tears continued to drip onto the floor. Luigi himself involuntarily shed tears, realizing that the child's smile would not appear so easily. The child's hands reached out to him, and he hugged Luigi tightly, speaking of his pain. Luigi looked at him with confusion, and the baby invited him to laugh together and show his true feelings. The sunset was quietly setting in the background. The imp penetrated Luigi's consciousness, as if exploring his inner world. He noticed that there was pain and darkness there, like a hospital filled with memories and fears. He asked about the reasons for this pain, trying to understand what exactly was frightening Luigi. He turned around, and instead of a face, there was a black hole, an emptiness that reflected his inner torment. Luigi tried to explain that it was just a mixture of difficult memories he had experienced. Although the imp's question made me wonder why an ordinary person has such deep emotional wounds. A black shadow began to emanate from Luigi, slowly approaching and filling the space around him. The monsters surrounded the imp like a materialization of his fears and Luigi's painful memories. He spoke with hope that finally someone began to see his inner pain, and he held out his hands, inviting the imp to join him in this darkness. But the imp, seized with horror, could not bear it. He screamed. He loosened his grip, let go of Luigi, and collapsed to the floor, unable to cope with the weight of what he saw. The little devil cried and screamed, desperately running away from Luigi, who was sitting on his knees and was covered in tears. He tried to stop the child, but he did not listen and rushed into another room, slamming the door behind him and hiding in a corner. From there, his sobs and frightened words could be heard about how he had met a real monster and how scared he was. Crying could be heard from behind the door. Luigi came and opened it, asking why he ran away, reminding him that his pain was special. But the little devil begged him not to come closer. At this time, the boss, watching what was happening, noted with satisfaction that he liked the tragedy. Tragedies revealed beauty, and a special taste of pain that remained in the memory forever. Few could smile when they heard the crying, because it revealed the most painful memories, as if destroying an internal enemy. The boss, watching the little devil, wondered why he was so scared and what exactly he saw. The little devil cried and wiped away his tears, asking Luigi to leave. He found a pair of scissors in his hands, and next to him on the floor lay a doll, the very one that reminded him of the crazy woman who lost her daughter, whose order he was carrying out. Luigi carefully said the name Xiao Xiao, which caused the child to become clearly agitated. The little devil, not understanding whether he knew his mother, screamed from a sharp pain in his head, grabbing it. Suddenly, a green thread burst out from behind the imp's back. Luigi tried to defend himself with scissors, but the blow was too strong. He fell to the floor, and the weapon slipped from his hands and flew to the side. From behind the imp's back, dozens of green threads burst forth, writhing in the air and rushing towards Luigi. He barely had time to dodge, avoiding the deadly blows. The space around him seemed to narrow, and Luigi, without wasting a second, ran out of the room, weaving between blows. Only when he was outside the danger zone did he catch his breath, looking at the door with alarm. He felt his heart pounding in his chest. The enhancement Pen had applied earlier had worked in time. Without it, he wouldn't have been able to save himself. A message appeared before my eyes. Status: Acceleration Effect. The object's movement speed is significantly increased, and attack speed by 20%. He realized that Peng had probably become the victim of a conspiracy that he had only previously suspected. Saving his strength turned out to be the right decision. Boss slowly descended from the top of the steps. He had been watching Luigi for a long time, considered the scissors a dangerous weapon, and would have preferred to keep them to himself. The boss admitted that his proximity to weeping makes him vulnerable to its abilities. He stressed that express employees are obliged to remain polite towards customers, even in such unusual circumstances. Monsters began to crawl out of the shadows behind Luigi, their bodies distorted, their movements broken, their faces featureless. Luigi asked if he had come to personally check everything. It was very touching. The boss admitted that he became curious about him and decided to talk to his employee. The boss slowly raised his hand, and a green glow enveloped the space around him. He explained that the imp was just a naive creature, weak and controllable. His presence here did not cause the boss any alarm or sympathy, only interest. The servants rolled a chair up to Luigi. Luigi didn't show any resistance. He still held himself confidently, carefully watching the boss's every move. The boss was talking business. He was interested in understanding. A friendly atmosphere is a necessary condition for smooth work. According to him, everything moves on demand. It is demand that determines value. It is demand that forms meaning. To maintain demand, he continued, it is necessary to demonstrate results. The customer needs to believe that the service will be performed. Even the most insane. And this, according to him, was the true philosophy of express delivery. Crying was a tool for him. It was the result of his efforts, a carefully cultivated mechanism that allowed him to look into the depths of each client's fear. Through this fear, he gained access to the very heart of their desires. He gave examples. One of his clients was afraid of obesity. This fear gave birth to a gym monster obsessed with food. His insatiable appetite became the embodiment of helplessness in the face of a body that was no longer obeying him. Others feared the loss of their external attractiveness. The lady with the covered face became a victim of exactly this. He said that he made her like this, disfigured, yearning to return to her former beauty, to restore the relationship forgotten behind the image. Meng stood there, thinking. The second order had not been found, and the prospect of going to the boss seemed tedious. At this time, Luigi was sitting in a chair opposite the boss, who continued to speak with unwavering calm. The boss reminded that for travelers, suffering is a loss, but for him, it is an experience. He could let someone fall, and that was part of the structure. From behind the doors appeared the imp, led by green threads. He was not walking of his own free will. Luigi glanced at him, and the boss continued, pointing at the child. If Lament killed Luigi, he would gain experience, he explained. The boss leaned forward, not hiding his satisfaction. This business, he said, was more than profitable. The boss admitted that he was truly curious about what Luigi was hiding, since even crying was scared to tears. Luigi didn't hide it. If there is interest, he will tell. It's not a secret. The boss, continuing the conversation, referred to a proverb popular among those who came from another world. The further into the forest, the more firewood. Having said this, he tied up Weeping with green threads and coldly bid him farewell. It was at that moment that a shot rang out. The boss turned around sharply, surprised. Luigi was holding a gaming console, not a weapon. He was looking straight ahead, holding the device confidently, as if it were more than just a toy. He pressed the button. The boss's eyes narrowed. Luigi said that any opponent could have more than one ace up his sleeve. The message that appeared on the screen confirmed, Game console N3000 is activated. Its effect was unusual. When activated, the device allowed the user to call the owner of the console for help. The boss, noticing the changes, was confused. Meanwhile, The gun that had been thrown out of Luji's hands earlier ended up in Weeping's hands. The whirlwind swirled around him, lifting all of the boss's subordinates into the air. The forces that had previously obeyed the boss no longer responded to his will. At that moment, a voice came from space, strong, confident. "Come out, fierce creature," said Luigi. Space trembled, as if time itself was preparing for the emergence of something greater. A new message appeared. "Sorry, the user you are calling is disconnected or temporarily unavailable." A cold, automated voice echoed through the air. Luigi froze, confusion in his eyes. He didn't believe it. He had hoped. And now he was disappointed. His voice shook as he screamed, as if he wanted to reach through reality. The boss narrowed his eyes mockingly and grinned. The little bastard had scared him. Then he gave the order. His subordinates rushed at Luigi. The scythes whistled in the air. Death seemed to be already hanging over his head. But the next moment, everything changed. The blows, sharp, precise, threw the enemies aside, scattering them around the room. The boss narrowed his eyes in surprise. Luigi stood, controlling a strange object. It was a soft, at first glance, pillow, wrapped with maces. It was she who defended herself as if she were alive. There was a note attached to her. "Do not disturb during lunch break." Luigi chuckled. The console wasn't fake. The boss clenched his fists. He was surprised. Looks like he'll have to figure this out with his own hands. Luigi looked at the pillow and quietly asked if she would do it. The answer was a rapid takeoff. The pillow, as if it had come to life, rushed forward. Her movement became a whirlwind, a tornado, weaving air and energy into itself, as if she were breathing battle. Green threads shot out from the boss's hands in response, wriggling as if alive, trying to grab the approaching object. The pillow spun in their flow, without slowing down. The force of the whirlwind resisted the pressure of the threads. The boss was perplexed. He did not understand what was happening. The pillow was already approaching very close. Its movement became almost imperceptible. There was a blow, direct, precise. The boss fell to the floor. The explosion shook the room. Light, dust, and a wave of pressure rolled across the floor. In the corner sat the imp. His eyes were full of tears. He saw everything. A pair of scissors fell to the ground. Luigi stepped forward, picked up his weapon, and looked at the pillow that was floating nearby. Luigi realized that this pillow was deadly. Equipment information. Name, Eternal Sleep. Type, Essential Item. Attack power, none. Quality, purple. Special effect, Lazy Bed. Allows the user to reduce their activity level to 90% while sleeping. HP and SP decrease by 5% per second while sleeping. Bad mood upon waking up. Additional, a pillow can be thrown at someone who is disturbing your sleep. Deals damage in 7 hits. Effective against creatures below the ferocious level. Usage period is 24 hours. Note, anyone who disturbs the sleep will be killed by the 7 kings of the abyss. Lazy. The console disappeared into thin air, which is not surprising since it is a disposable item. Luigi stood in a huge crater, tightly clutching his weapon. Scissors, which had already saved him in difficult situations more than once. The little devil sat behind the chair, wiping away tears, and Reyes, despite the pain, knew that the battle was just beginning. Green tongues of power were waiting behind him, ready to seize and destroy. But he was not going to give up. With each blade cutting the threads, health decreased, but the spirit remained strong. He ran forward, overcoming pain and fatigue. The blow he used resembled the destructive force of a natural disaster, powerful and merciless. Meanwhile, the boss, surrounded by green light and threads, watched this with interest. He couldn't help but admit that despite all his efforts, Lucha still didn't have a single trump card up his sleeve, and this surprised him. From afar, green magical threads were visible, filling the space. On the street, Fatso found himself trapped by green threads that pierced the castle gates like living snakes. He screamed in tension and pain, feeling like something inside him was about to explode. Pen watched in bewilderment. This couldn't be the work of a newbie. The screams echoed towards Maine. The girl with the ugly face rushed to attack. But suddenly, she collapsed to the ground. Her legs were tightly tied with green threads, as if a living trap was pulling her in. Meng turned around and saw more and more tongues of green threads bursting out of the castle, like snakes ready to catch and strangle all living things. The little devil, seized with horror, screamed and tried to break free, but the green threads grabbed him by the leg, not letting him go. Everything that was happening seemed like a fast, compressed battle, where every second was worth its weight in gold. The boss, watching the chaos, said with cold cynicism that even if all this was for a short, only 7-minute benefit. But he could not refuse to increase the level of danger. At this point, Luigi was wondering if the game was even worth the effort and risk. The answer seemed increasingly unclear to him in the chaos of what was happening. The boss abruptly stated that due to Luigi's actions, he had lost many years of profit and intended to pay him back. Suddenly, the window broke, and a monster jumped out. It landed next to Luigi. She was a crazy woman. Her appearance had lost its human appearance. The boss was surprised. The tied-up imp was still next to him. The monster screamed and rushed to attack, swinging a knife. The boss asked why the escaped puppet had returned. The woman screamed, simultaneously freeing the imp from the green threads and taking him in her hands, throwing him away. However, the threads began to penetrate her body. The best one, watching what was happening, noted that this little one probably plays a key role in what was happening. He recognized the woman, but he knew she wouldn't last long in this situation. Realizing that time was running out, he decided to fulfill his order urgently. The little devil didn't stop crying. Luigi addressed him as a little rascal and reminded him that he always wanted to see what a smile looked like. Then, taking a sword and scissors in his hands, he began to cut his mouth. Blood flowed onto the ground. He asked, with cold determination, if this was the very smile that the imp so passionately desired to see. Congratulations for completing the order, Smile Delivery, appeared on the screen, and the simultaneous completion of the increased difficulty quest marked the hero's promotion to manager agent of the Express Company. Eventually, anger took over the puppet completely, turning it into a mad force. The child's mother's recklessness meant nothing to the boss. Without hesitation, he grabbed the woman by the throat and forcefully pushed her into the wall. He declared his status as Express Manager, stressing that under his leadership, it is only a matter of time to deal with any cruel creature. His only goal remained a new batch of clients. Admiring Luigi's cruelty and strength, he urged his subordinates to show everything they were capable of. But suddenly, an error window appeared, something that could disrupt plans and change the course of events. At the moment, 2 managers are registered in the Express system, which is why it has become temporarily impossible to contact the client. The system strongly recommended making sure that only 1 manager was authorized. The boss was surprised. Who could smile at Plach? Luigi, the acting store manager, addressed his boss with sarcasm. He hinted that he might be interested in early retirement, inciting further conflict. From now on, Luigi can use the privileges of a shop manager. The reward for completing the final challenge is increased by 400%. Since the company currently has 2 managers registered, it is temporarily impossible to use the full package of privileges. This created tension and made it clear that an internal conflict had to be resolved in order to gain full control and access to new opportunities. Luigi heard the boss's threat and felt determination boiling inside him. The boss reminded him of the level difference, declaring that after killing Luigi, he would become the sole manager, thereby taking away all the privileges and power. But Luigi knew that strength was not only in numbers and titles, but in cunning and tenacity. This was a challenge that could not be ignored. Luigi calmly reminded that everything must be agreed upon with the client. At that moment, the fat man smashed through the ceiling with all his might, breaking inside with inhuman strength. The boss said that this level was not enough, underestimating the enemy. At that moment, a shot rang out, and suddenly a message about a third-level technique, Berserker, appeared. The fat man changed. His body was filled with rage, his muscles bulged, his eyes lit up with furious power. The boss watched the transformation in surprise, realizing that he was facing a much more serious opponent than he expected. The fat man grabbed the green threads with force, causing the boss to lose his balance and fly back. Luigi watched what was happening carefully. Suddenly, the fat man delivered a powerful blow to the boss's jaw. There was a deafening explosion that illuminated the entire area around. Pan, holding a blaster in her hands, looked at Luigi carefully, assessing his actions. He showed himself to be more than just a newbie, and that impressed her. She proposed an alliance. Luigi, without losing his composure, agreed. A temporary but mutually beneficial cooperation was established between them. The boss cleared his throat, having a hard time accepting the fact that someone had dared to stand up to him. His face contorted with irritation, but the next moment he froze. Someone's hands grabbed him tightly from behind. The scary girl, who seemed to appear from the shadows, spoke with contempt. Before the manager's intervention, everything was going according to plan, and it was he who violated the order. As if confirming her words, Meng appeared in front. Luigi watched the scene and realized that the technique called Xiaohua's forbidden technique was now in use. This move has the potential to deliver maximum impact in terms of power. Effective, merciless, and aimed straight at the boss's weak point. As Peng warned everyone to cover their eyes and put on protective goggles, the tension became almost palpable. The boss did not hide his confusion, trying to understand what exactly his opponents were planning to do. However, Meng calmly explained that he had a special ability, the ability to strengthen any muscle in the body. Moreover, the more powerful the muscle itself, the more destructive its effect becomes when activated. He asked the question, "What is the strongest muscle in a person?" At this point, the boss began to guess, and his expression changed. The answer was unexpected. It was language. Meng's technique, called magic language, was activated. The message that appeared in the interface confirmed the activation. A 3-unit increase to the characteristic, going beyond the human norm. The strengthened muscle became not just a weapon, but also continued to increase its strength during the battle. Main's tongue has transformed into a fully fledged combat weapon, highlighting the absurd yet terrifying effectiveness of his special technique. The woman, whose face was distorted, said that Main's language was truly incredible. Each strike dealt damage equal to the user's full strength, and with each new level of enhancement, the effects became more and more devastating. The licking left a clear mark on the boss's body, a powerful physical blow that caused him to scream. Peng watched this with interest, admiring the effectiveness of this unusual skill. Luigi, who was usually unperturbed, couldn't help but wince. Meng continued to move in the rhythm of the fight, as if choreographing pain. Luigi stood to the side, clenching his fists. Although what was happening seemed crazy to him, he felt that he was watching something important. This technique, the 7 deadly cuts, was not just a combination. This is a technique that can knock out up to 70% of the opponent's HP. It is often used as a finishing move. It's far from easy to activate, but once you do, it's impossible to dodge. The damage is simply horrific. What Men uses is a finishing move that can only be used once. The last one, the boss screamed. Pan, watching the fight, felt her insides tighten. Despite her dislike for the elder, even she understood that someone who could bring an opponent to such a state represented a threat on a completely different level. On-screen messages indicated that the Express main task had completed successfully. The countdown to returning to the test site has already begun. Pan offered Luigi friendship, noting that it was better not to have any dealings with people like the enemy they had defeated. In her mind, Peng admitted that compared to him, this newcomer was even quite worthy. They touched each other with seals, a symbol of acceptance of the alliance. Pan squinted, noticing something strange on Luigi's face, and asked what it was. Luigi replied that he simply wanted to make the child smile genuinely. Hearing this, Peng smiled back. The exhausted and distraught woman sat pressed against the cold wall. The little devil approached her timidly. He pulled her by the shoulder, trying to wake her up. There was anxiety and childish misunderstanding in his voice. He didn't know who she was, but something about her drew him in. Questions flew from his lips. Who was she? Why did she save him? Did she know his mother? The woman, as if waking up, slowly raised her hand and touched his face. There was something familiar in this touch. Her gaze cleared. A warm tremor appeared in her voice. She recognized her. Memories flashed through her mind. She once shouted, "Xiao! Xiao!" rushing towards her daughter, catching her in her arms. An image of the past washed over her like a wave. The girl was running towards her, laughing as she once did. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Something broken inside her became whole again. Hugging the imp, she said. She had finally found her. This long-awaited moment of reunion was a moment that was worth all the pain. Peng watched the touching reunion scene in silence, her expression at first one of surprise, but soon tears began to roll down her cheeks. She wondered to herself whether it was possible that sentimentality was hidden under the mask of irony and fighting spirit. Meng, who was standing nearby, noticed her condition. His voice sounded warning. Those who were near this man were not allowed to cry. Emotions are a weakness that this reality does not forgive. Peng smiled weakly through her tears. Who would have thought that she, too, had a heart? The newcomer's unexpected strength amazed even the experienced players. Pen expressed her willingness to fight together at the next opportunity. Then a system message came. The test will be completed in 5 seconds. Meng, still pondering what had happened, suggested meeting in the main city, intending to ask Luigi more about himself. The countdown has begun. 4, 3. Luigi said a quick goodbye. Meng and Pen disappeared, dissolving in a flash of light. Left alone, Luigi sighed with relief. The boss said, "Now they are gone, so we can stop." The fat man froze in surprise. He couldn't believe that the boss was still alive. The crazy woman standing nearby also did not hide her amazement. The boss tried to understand why the traveler was still here when the mission was complete. Her voice sounded wary. Why continue? However, Luigi did not participate in the trials for the sake of winning or awards. His real goal is to try to find meaning in what is happening, in life, in himself. He felt that there was someone else behind all this, someone in the shadows. He needed to catch everyone who was behind the scenes. At this point, a system message appeared. Starting secret test, Truth Express. You have successfully completed the main mission and are officially appointed as the new manager of Express. From now on, you will have access to special privileges. You can resign from the position and reveal the real truth about Hangvan Express. Please note that after accepting, the rewards change. You have decided to accept the mission. You will not leave the testing ground in 60 seconds. Good luck, traveler. The boss admitted that this time traveler was indeed different from the others. The puppet sitting in the chair spoke and asked why he was like this. He knew too much about him. Everything. Techniques, weaknesses, hidden abilities. He knew that the ability to charm required physical contact. That a weapon capable of wounding a ferocious creature can only be activated in response to the first attack. That this man is capable of passing the test of the highest difficulty, and does so with almost indifferent confidence. All this meant only one thing. He had been watched from the very beginning. The lifelessness of her gaze was replaced by emotion, mockery, anger, or perhaps something more. Her voice was no longer empty. She acknowledged that his tongue was boneless and could indeed knock even the most stable structure off balance. The scary woman suddenly approached and grabbed the puppet by the head. But Luigi stopped her, pointing out that what they had in front of them was just a fake body. The woman and the fat man standing next to her stared in surprise at the doll lying on the floor. Luigi explained that the other corpse, the manager, was also nothing more than another puppet. At that moment, another puppet spoke up, confirming Luigi's guess and acknowledging his intelligence. That was why he had managed to take the position of manager. Luigi recalled that from the very beginning, there were clues pointing to the true nature of what was happening, and that greed, which forces customers to constantly change their requests, will ultimately turn against the system itself. Luigi looked at the business card and calmly said that in front of him was the very will of the store, the essence of the entire system, striving to increase demand at any cost. At that moment, the puppets began to rise from the ground. The fat man rushed into the attack with a cry, promising to tear them apart. But he was surprised when one of the puppets grabbed his leg and stopped him. The mad woman, exhausted and still holding on with her last strength, stood up, clutching the knife to protect the child. The puppets were getting stronger. One of them, running up, said that for Luigi it no longer mattered how many of them there were. After all, the client's desires were akin to instincts, and it was impossible to stop them. The puppet calmly explained that in normal times, people restrain their desires with morality, laws, and other conventions. But she's just shaking out their true needs. However, Luigi was different from the others. He was quite desperate, reckless, and unrestrained. And that is precisely why he was suitable for the role of the new manager. The puppet felt something dangerous growing inside him, something that frightened even him, as if he had some kind of sinister purpose. Her voice sounded in his ear. She suggested teaming up. He chuckled and said he had no intention of becoming anyone's puppet. The puppet tried to convince him that as a time traveler, he could not truly use his evil nature. But if he gives her his body, together they will become a force that will have no equal in the whole world. At this, Luigi only chuckled. No one said he couldn't use his darkness. The demonic essence was activated. A fierce storm began, lightning tore through the sky, thunder rumbled as if the elements themselves had become enraged. The players were running around the field in panic, pursued by a giant insect. The digger, relentless and predatory. One of the runners became exhausted and, out of breath, asked how much longer this would go on. The order was still not completed, and the manager had not appeared. There seemed to be no hope, but suddenly one of them looked up. High in the sky, something was slowly beginning to appear through the curtain of clouds. Everyone's eyes turned upward. It was him, Luigi. He floated in the air, shrouded in lightning. His hair became long and white, as if bleached by the storm itself. His appearance was like the coming of a spirit of punishment, sudden, majestic, and frightening. The players froze. The manager had arrived. The puppet couldn't believe what was happening. In her opinion, time travelers were incapable of awakening a power of such magnitude. Meanwhile, Luigi, engulfed in a white glow, slowly raised his weapon. His eyes sparkled, emitting the same dazzling energy. A pillar of power fell from the sky, piercing the ground with a deafening roar. The blast wave rolled far beyond the battlefield, reaching distant regions. Somewhere in a hated place. In her room, Miss Linney woke up with a start, her gaze becoming anxious. Her body trembled as if it responded to something ancient and dangerous. She immediately recognized the source. It was an aura of insane level. A message has appeared about a strong level of express order pickup points. After the explosion, a huge crater gaped on the ground, with debris and bodies of the dead scattered around. The crazy woman, covering Xiao Xiao with her body, tried to wake up the child, but he showed no signs of life. Suddenly another rock fell to the ground, and Fatso crawled out from under it. He noted with relief that he was still alive. The woman, hiding among the rubble, whispered that she thought she would die. They both knew it was Ludgy's doing. The fat man noticed that it seemed he had already left. Suddenly, a question was asked about what it was all about. The scary woman and the fat man turned around in surprise, and they saw Miss Sloth hovering on her flying weapon pillow. They called her Mrs. Letyaika. She demanded a detailed explanation of what had happened, listening carefully to every word. After some time, Miss Sloth stepped into the portal, declaring that she was about to go to the human world. Ludgy, that sly one, was trying to confuse her. The scary woman and the fat man were kneeling in front of her, realizing the seriousness of the situation. The scary woman sighed heavily. The fat man said with relief that they had survived. A voice behind her made the lady turn around. The crazy woman, holding Xiao Xiao in her arms, desperately begged to save the child, kneeling in front of her. She was ready to pay any price, banging her head on the ground, asking for help. Miss Laziness explained that the basis of a child's existence is resentment, and without the source of this resentment, the child will lose his strength. The madwoman refused to believe it, but Miss Laziness turned away, as if not wanting to argue. Then the madwoman had a mysterious object in her hands, a green lantern, a blue artifact capable of absorbing the power of the soul. Its user can use it to absorb other people's souls, but the note stated that it is best not to use it as a normal street lamp. Miss Sloth warned that refusing to use the power for one's own existence would result in the erasure of all memories. She reminded that the price of sacrifice was high, and she would have to go through everything herself. Then she entered the portal, which immediately disappeared. The crazy woman sat next to Xiao Xiao's body, tears rolling down her cheeks. The lantern in her hands began to emit light, and shimmering balls appeared around it. The woman held her daughter tenderly and began to tell a story. Once upon a time, there lived a girl, a real crybaby, who loved to cry more than anything in the world. One day she got a doll that became her best friend. Since then, the girl told the doll about everything that happened to her. Gradually, the crybaby stopped crying and grew up. At this moment, Xiao Xiao began to open her eyes, realizing that she was alone on the street. The girl asked where she was. Looking ahead, she quietly said, "Wah!" Her doll appeared in front of her. Lucci woke up on his bed in the ward and was confused, trying to understand what had happened. Events came to mind: the murder of the guy, the notification of the completion of the mission. The system congratulated him on completing the express-level dungeon. The main and hidden missions were completed. The overall rating was excellent. The reward calculation began, but then a warning appeared. Anomalous activity detected. Connection with the other world will be lost in a matter of seconds. Luigi was surprised. He switched off immediately after the transition and never saw the reward. At that moment, there was a loud knock on the door. He was surprised. After all, he was in the hospital. Who could be breaking in like that? The doors swung open and monsters appeared on the threshold. Ludgy decided that these were hallucinations due to the effect of the drug and turned away, not wanting to react to them. The monster suddenly attacked Luigi with its long tongue, but he managed to dodge the blow. The blood on his cheek showed that the blow was no small one, and Luigi couldn't tell if these monsters were real or not. At that moment, nurses entered the room and noticed that Ludgy was sitting on the floor and behaving strangely. He was silent and did not answer their questions. One of the nurses even suggested that he was going crazy. Luigi saw two monsters threatening him in his mind and wondered if he should kill them. Unable to bear the tension, he jumped up, leaped, and ran down the corridor, and the nurses shouted after him, trying to stop him. The nurse responded quickly and reported to the duty room that Mr. Luigi was having problems again. Meanwhile, Luigi was rushing along the corridor, surrounded by hallucinations. Monsters were appearing everywhere. One of them appeared right in front of him and struck him in the leg, piercing it right through. Blood gushed out as the monster's tentacles closed in, pinning Luigi to the wall. It all seemed so real, and he saw no way out. In a panic, he reached into his backpack, trying to call for help through the Ripper sphere. An orderly on duty nearby responded on the radio, reporting that the patient had been found. According to him, Luigi was scared, slipped, and fell, but he did not have any serious injuries. The orderly tried to calm Luigi down and called him to the treatment room, but he suddenly jumped up and ran away. In a desperate move, Luigi jumped out of the window, and shards of glass flew into the air. The children were playing outside and begged Brother Lee not to go away again. They asked how long he was going away, and if he could stay. Brother Lee smiled and said that he had found a place where he could make good money, promising to return as soon as possible. He patted the children on the head and asked them to behave well until he returned. The children readily agreed. Suddenly, one of the boys noticed something in the distance and pointed into the darkness, telling Brother Lee that there was someone there. Luigi slowly emerged from the alley, wearing his nightshirt and heading towards them. The children asked in surprise why he was wearing hospital pajamas and whether he was sick. They suggested that he go to the hospital. His eyes glowed bright red and he screamed, "Die!" Brother Lee immediately grabbed the children and warned them of the danger. Luigi began to swing his weapon, but missed, hitting the steps. Brother Lee managed to jump back with the children and ordered them to run immediately, holding a scroll in their hands. The magic scroll, called Harmful Teleportation, was of green quality and was classified as an artifact. Its effect allowed it to forcibly teleport the selected target up to 30 meters away. The children shouted, "Run!" and started running away. The girl asked Brother Lee what would happen to him. He assured them that he was very strong. Luigi appeared right in front of Brother Lee, and he thought he was finished. He swung the scissors at Brother Lee, who knelt down and tried to stop him. He appealed to his reason, asking if he recognized him. Luigi begged him to run, admitting that he could not control himself. One of his eyes became normal, and he tried to resist his evil nature. Luigi's eyes flashed red, and suddenly there was an explosion. Luigi struck. Fiery streaks emanated from Luigi. Brother Lee, in fear, shouted, "Save me!" and ran away. The children were frightened and screamed. Luigi's strike split into 2 streaks of fire as Miss Sloth appeared in front. There was thick smoke all around, and Brother Lee covered his face, trying to hide. He noticed horns in the fog and thought it was another monster, but it was actually Miss Sloth. Not only did Luigi endure the insane level of power, but he also managed to clear his mind for a moment. Miss Sloth noted that he was truly an extraordinary person. Luigi rushed forward, clutching his weapon. Miss Sloth, watching him, thought that this was exactly the kind of person she had planned for. It was not for nothing that she gave him a tracking demon. She activated her power and a wave of magic spread around. It started to snow, which surprised the children. They raised their heads to the sky, watching the snowflakes fall. Suddenly they began to yawn and say they were sleepy, and then one by one they fell to the ground and fell asleep. Luigi slowed, stopped, and dropped to one knee. He asked if this was her doing. Miss Sloth apologized, saying that she didn't mean to set him up. She just didn't expect him to actually awaken his true power. Luigi said he had been waiting for this moment and asked for an explanation, but soon fell silent. His eyes closed, and he fell asleep. Miss Laziness, standing over the sleeping Luigi, promised to tell everything. He fell asleep right on the cold tiles. She noted that Luigi had caused quite a stir, and to figure it out, she had to start from the very beginning. A huge dome suddenly appeared around them, and a deep stripe was visible on the ground, the mark of a powerful blow. The children were still sleeping on the ground, as if immersed in a deep sleep. Brother Lee watched everything and thought, incredible ability. A high-ranking demoness from another world. Everything that was happening seemed like some kind of joke or prank to him. He laughed quietly. He must have entered a completely different world. Suddenly, a man with a covered face appeared nearby. He apologized for disturbing us. Brother Lee looked at him in surprise, but the man did not linger and walked past, heading forward. Who he was, and how he ended up here, was unknown. Miss Laziness decided to visit the human world and encountered the night guard, asked the man with a covered face. He expressed surprise and recalled the agreement prohibiting the appearance of higher powers in the mortal world without permission. Miss Lin took this with irony, considering the night guard's boring and predictable. Despite her challenge, the guard acknowledged her power and stated that although he was a simple demon, he was ready to stand guard, and he will not allow her to overcome him, even using a human body. Miss Sloth noted with irritation that the night guards were real suicides and she did not want to quarrel with them. She explained that she came because of Luigi, pointing at him. The guard, skeptical, considered Luigi to be just a newbie, incapable of using artifacts from other worlds, and he didn't understand how he was different from the other recruits. Brother Lee, looking out from behind the guard, asked in bewilderment if they were talking about him. Miss Sloth pointed out that it was strange that the guard did not notice Luigi's true nature. The guard was surprised and touched the sleeping Luigi's forehead, after which he was shocked by what was happening and urgently called for reinforcements. The dome that surrounded them began to dissipate. The other guards were surprised by the appearance of a living source of evil, a new and unusual phenomenon. Luigi's eyelids trembled, and Miss Sloth explained that he had awakened the power of true evil during the battle and had reached an insane level of strength, causing quite a few problems. The guard repeated the words about the insane level with surprise and doubted the veracity of what he heard. Miss Sloth was ready to take Luigi and assured that she would never return to this world. With the power of magic, she lifted Luigi from the floor and moved him to the portal. But the guard said that he belonged to this world and could not be taken away so easily. The guards tried to hold Luigi's body. Miss Sloth was surprised by such determination and asked whether the guardian would be able to hold him back. The guards reminded him that they knew what would happen to the man who awakened the source of true evil. Then the guardian, taking off his collar and revealing his face, confessed that people had created a living source of true evil. Even if it means their death, the Night Watch will protect him. Miss Sloth agreed to leave Luigi with the night guards, noting it as a temporary solution. She added that they should all hurry up as open testing is about to begin, an important event that cannot be missed. The guard was surprised by the speed of what was happening, expressing doubts about the people's readiness to undergo tests of such a cruel level. He mentioned Siming, the sixth star in the constellation next to Ursa Major. The Night Watch used to guard Ursa Minor. Miss Sloth asked how many stars were left there, and I thought about the point of testing if the stars go out. The guard confirmed this assumption and asked her to leave the human world. Miss Laziness calmly replied that she was already leaving. She walked up to Luigi, touched his head, and kissed his forehead, giving him a boost that would protect his consciousness. The guard asked about the nature of the enhancement, to which she received an evasive answer. The portal has disappeared. The guards standing nearby discussed what had happened, whether the enhancement could be transmitted through the mouth, but decided not to meddle where it was not necessary. At this time, Brother Lee, hiding, observed the situation and noted that everything seemed to be fine. He thought Luya just wanted to scare him, but he never expected him to be ready to kill him dead. He was wrong again. He suspected that it was not done deliberately. Not understanding what was happening to him, he suddenly heard a voice from behind. It was the Guardian. He cried out in fear. The guard introduced himself as Juan and offered to help him become stronger, but warned that it would require a price. Lee, trying to hide, asked to pretend that the guardian did not see him, but was refused. The guard reminded that testing was about to begin, and Lee would barely survive even the first rounds. In response, Lee screamed and tried to break free, but the guardian grabbed him by the pants and began to pull him. At this time, the children were sleeping peacefully in the corner. Night enveloped the city. The windows of multi-story buildings flickered with lights. There were signs on the board saying "Wanted" and "Reward Price," but they were all crossed out. Pen sat in her chair, irritated that Ludgie, whom she had been texting, was ignoring her messages. She typed into her phone, "Ludgie, we're already out. Why aren't you in town? Better, are you here?" Adding a few question marks at the end. She was furious inside. It seemed he was trying to trick her. Next time, Pen thought, she would kill him for a good reward. At that moment, the telephone rang. Hearing the ringing, Pen picked up the phone and asked sharply, "Beggar?" An angry voice came from the other side. Her uncle was outraged by such an attitude. Uncle mockingly asked if she was a stranger to him, and asked if the night watch had disbanded yet. Pen answered coldly. If there were no more questions, she would hang up. But her uncle insisted. He had an urgent task for her. Pen tried to refuse, saying that she was busy. She wrote down, "Kill Lou," accompanied by the notes, "The reward is enormous," and "They won't hurt you." She thought about it, and then ironically admitted to herself that she couldn't refuse her beloved uncle. After all, this was a chance to express her love and respect to him. At night, at Sacred Heart Hospital, the child slowly opened his eyes. The doctor, noticing this, came up and asked if he remembered that he had been here before. The child sat up carefully on the bed. The doctor reassured him, saying that he was in no danger here, and then left the room. At this time, the system asked about the results of the examination. The doctor reported that there is no data yet. The enemy has the ability to erase memory, so they are lagging behind. There is no need to worry, however. The doctor asked me to tell the elder that he will continue to monitor the source of the problem. The angels fought with desperation, shouting, "Die!" as they rushed towards the enemy. They did not retreat, despite the influx of monsters that filled everything around them. The forces were unequal, and the only chance of victory was to eliminate the devil. He sat on a throne surrounded by flames. Concentrating his magic, he released a burst of fire, destroying entire ranks of opponents. His voice, filled with darkness, echoed across the battlefield as he called himself the true source of evil. The devil declared that he had sent the 7 deadly sins to different worlds, and a powerful flash of power flared up behind him, shooting up into the sky. He proclaimed that he was sending heavenly punishment. At that moment, somewhere else, a voice sounded, calling for Luju to wake up. He opened his eyes and saw his hands, looking around in surprise. A seal began to form around him, an ancient magical pattern designed to bind the demon at the command of a higher power. The guards uttered the word "sacrifice" while performing a mysterious ritual. Luigi watched the events unfold, realizing that he was witnessing a fragment of the memories of those who had awakened the source of true evil within themselves in the past. He tried to reach out to Len, and soon heard the voice of her spirit. She explained that she could not remain in the human world for long, so she left part of her knowledge in spiritual form. From now on, images and memories of previous victims will appear in Luigi's dreams, events related to the source and the general situation in the world. When Luigi asked about the current situation, Miss Sloth pointed to a screen that appeared in the air. The scene changed. Luigi was lying on the bed, all wrapped up in chains. Pen was surprised to see him in such a state. She turned to her guard uncle, questioning his sanity. In response to her barb, he reminded her of the awakening of the source. Pen admitted that she knew about the awakening, but she didn't imagine that it happened to Luigi, looking at him with unexpected attention. Pen asked what happened to the blonde guy, not fully understanding who he was. She noticed that the two were quite close and wondered if she should interfere in this situation. Brother Lee smiled and laughed, reminding him that he had introduced them to each other, but Pen immediately said that she did not remember him. She put the gun to Ludgie's head, and a shot rang out. However, Uncle Pen chuckled, explaining that she couldn't kill him. The bullet was stuck between his fingers. Brother Lee was scared and wondered who these people were, and why everything was so strange. Pen said this is because her master died many years ago, fighting the previous awakener of the source of evil. Shilu and Shanshen gave their lives fighting the previous awakening source of evil many years ago. Yanshu never recovered from those wounds. Uncle threw away the bullet. Pen was glad that someone remembered, and immediately asked him to explain why he wanted to protect Ludgie. She spoke of discord among the troops that had previously obeyed the elders, but despite this, continued to worship the awakened one. At this moment, Brother Lee's voice interrupted the conversation. He recalled that Luja was not like the previous awakened, and wondered why he had to be killed. Pen replied that Luja had awakened the source, and most, about 90% of those who awakened it, still die. The remaining 10% is absorbed by the source. The person loses his former essence and turns into a ruthless monster, capable only of murder. That was why Luigi was like that, Brother Lee realized. The Guardian warned that if anyone in this world decided to possess the source, they must be destroyed immediately. The root of all evil, the Lord of Darkness, was like an inescapable curse that could not be gotten rid of or resisted. Nobody knew when and how it appeared, who was the first, who it affected. It is only known that those who awakened his power either died or went mad, or the curse consumed their soul, turning them into true monsters. Pan wondered what her choice would be if he were in her place, faced with such evil. Brother Lee was at a loss. Luzi believed that the problem should be immediately gotten rid of, like a weed, so that it does not grow. Lu Ji, looking at the screen, supported this thought. Miss Sloth's incarnation asked him if he himself agreed with it. Uncle reminded that it is difficult for people by nature to compete with creatures from other worlds. Usually, the ferocious level was the limit for humans, which often caused them to lose in clashes with them. But the source of evil changed everything. First appearing during the invasion of aliens from other worlds, he helped people avoid total disaster. Not only did he overcome the brutal level, but he single-handedly turned the tide of the entire battle. Ultimately, both sides came to the conclusion that resolving conflicts through violent clashes was pointless. Since then, the source of evil has become a tool with which the outcome of decisive battles is decided, bringing either victory or defeat. Pen admitted that her mentor had never told her about this. She asked if this was true. At that time, it remained a big unspoken secret, known only to a few, the uncle explained. Later, the source of evil's consciousness was absorbed, causing a massive catastrophe that he couldn't even talk about. Pen noted that then everything wasn't so pointless. He asked what exactly was not meaningless, to which she replied that she expected to hear more nonsense from his lips. It turned out that in those days, there were still people capable of real feats, Pen noted. Uncle exclaimed, indignant at her words. However, the main task was to save Luja. Even if he turned into a monster in the future, that would be dealt with later, the uncle reassured. Overall, there was no need to worry too much. Brother Lee admitted that he had heard so much information that he no longer understood anything. However, he clearly remembered seeing Luj in a fit of madness. He noted that if it weren't for Luj's kind soul, he wouldn't have lived to see the rest of them. Brother Lee smiled and expressed his hope that perhaps Luja would not be swallowed up by the source after all. His words made his uncle think, according to him, if Luja was able to come out of his state of madness on his own, it would be an unprecedented case. No one who has awakened the source of true evil has ever shown such control before. Brother Lee noted that Miss Laziness had witnessed this and could confirm it. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Uncle decided that Luju needed to be woken up as soon as possible. Using the magic ring, he created a flash of light and transmitted it to Brother Lee. The fate replacement amulet appeared in his palms, and his face showed concentration. The fate replacement amulet turned out to be a blue artifact. With a unique effect, its owner could evade any test by officially refusing the task. However, as the note on the artifact said, not everything was so simple. It even included an alarming "Don't hit me" and a desperate "Why are you following me?" Brother Lee, seeing its properties, could not contain his admiration. The artifact was clearly rare and worth a lot. The only way to keep Luj from falling into the abyss is to strengthen his spiritual power, which will compensate for the growing negative energy. But if Luja, as the bearer of the source, voluntarily takes part in the game, he will face a test of increased difficulty, a cruel level. To soften the conditions, Brother Lee will have to accompany him, perhaps even become his link to reality. Uncle, looking at Brother Lee, seriously added that if he agreed to help, the artifact would immediately become his property. When Brother Lee asked if Pen would be able to protect him after entering the trial, Uncle confidently confirmed. He also assured that if Lee fails, he will have the opportunity to leave. But as soon as he started to speak again, the second guard abruptly interrupted him and gave him a slap on the back of the head, recalling that he was given a lot of auxiliary artifacts, and if Lee dies even with them, he will be to blame for it himself. Lee explained that he was simply nervous. This was his first time participating in a challenge of such high difficulty. A system notification immediately appeared on the screen. 10 seconds remained before entering the trial zone. He was surprised to find that he had received so much help from Mr. Zhuan, while Pen seemed to be left with nothing. He asked where they got such a person who was ready to help without any conditions. At that moment, a notification came to Peng's phone that 1 million yuan had been credited. Xuan confirmed that he had transferred the reward. Ping thanked him briefly, as if nothing special had happened. Brother Lee, noticing what was happening, was genuinely surprised. He did not expect that Peng would receive such an impressive sum. Indignantly, he began to ask why she got more and why they forgot about him. Meanwhile, the movement to the test zone began. The guards did not answer. They only laughed quietly, commenting with a grin on how young and energetic Lee is. Xuan noted that perhaps they were especially important to him. The second guard reacted to this with surprise and remembered the artifacts that were given to Lee. Xuan had once wanted to at least take a look at them, but had not received permission. Now he believed that Lee would not survive anyway, while Peng could still be counted on. He also recalled an old phrase of Xuan's about how sad it would be if after death there was nothing left. But, in his opinion, the child is still too weak, and even if he starts training immediately, there will not be enough time. However, he admitted that he felt something familiar in it, something in common. And so I waited with interest to see who Luya would become in the future. A notification appeared on the screen. The participants, Luja, Dali, and Pen, had officially entered the multiplayer trial zone. The difficulty level is marked as hard, with a corresponding reward, a blue chest filled with treasure. However, the warning was clear. Dying in this trial would result in a complete loss of level, skills, and all accumulated items. Connection complete, 4th level location, disaster cage activated. The system wished good luck to the participants. The mission turned out to be unexpected. Pet the cat. Dolly was amazed when a creature that only vaguely resembled a cat appeared before them. It was of terrifying size and had long, curved claws that dug into the ground with every movement. The monster suddenly attacked Dolly. Before he could react, he rushed away. But the monster was too fast. Within moments, Dolly was cornered, and the huge paws raised their claws to strike. Dolly continued to back away in panic, whispering to himself that he was finished, until he accidentally activated the interface with data about the object. The screen displayed information. Object 057. Spiritual code. Evil level 500. Danger level medium. The conditions of detention were clear. The subject must be kept in a single cage, with regular monitoring of his emotional state. In case of instability, retreat, calm down, and leave the area until the object's condition returns to normal. The note emphasized the essence. Subject 057 is a black kitten, outwardly docile. However, he exhibits attacks of obsession, and at such moments, he attacks all intelligent beings within a radius of 10 meters without hesitation. The only way to deal with the situation is to treat the object as if it were a pet, gently and affectionately. Then it will not be difficult to calm it down. Dolly realized that salvation was not in strength, but in behavior. He rushed around the arena, randomly calling out to his comrades, hoping to hear a response. In another part of the zone, Peng assessed the situation. Such a powerful opponent at the very beginning of the test was alarming. A message about Object 013 appeared before her eyes. A red fish with a sweetness level of 4,800 and a high level of danger. The conditions of detention included complete isolation and feeding twice a day, with a categorical ban on objects with an arc shape nearby. According to the note, the object was a huge fish monster with a fanatical desire to devour anything that even slightly resembled a meatball in shape. This made her especially dangerous. The sphere was a signal for her to attack, regardless of the material. Feeling threatened, the fish became active. Its eyes turned bright scarlet, and it instantly rushed towards her, opening its mouth. The floor trembled under the onslaught of the monster, and Pan realized that she had to act immediately. An alarming message appeared on the door screen about the mysterious Object 001, an unnamed male creature with highly developed mental abilities. The level of evil and the degree of danger remained unknown, and methods of neutralization had not yet been found. The object has already damaged 6 pieces of equipment, including the newest detector, which can detect a maximum of 99,999 units of evil. Its unpredictability and destructive potential caused great concern among observers. The best man in the cell finally woke up and tried to get attention by asking if anyone was around and offering to talk. Luigi looked closely at the flying camera and noted that no one came to him, as if the other side was avoiding contact. He understood that someone was still watching what was happening, although they did not show themselves clearly. A message appeared on the screen about the completion of the main task, escaping from the Disaster Association, with the promise of a blue treasure chest as a reward. Luigi remembered that he had heard this name somewhere before, and realized that the skills acquired during the training could come in handy. He remembered that the manager had mentioned this association and that even he himself was afraid of it. Despite this, Luigi realized that he shouldn't underestimate his strength. Later, the system notified that a sudden exit had been detected last time, and the rewards for it had been fully taken into account, which surprised Luigi. A message appeared. You have been promoted to acting store manager. Reward increased by 400%. You have solved the truth about One Express. Reward increased by 200%. You have taken over One Express. Reward increased by 500%. Your final reward ratio was 1,200%. Final reward, 2,000 points. Reward, Purple Treasure Chest 1, Blue Treasure Chest 2. Thanks to your progress, the level has been increased to level 5. The reward for fixing the mess in the governance system is 3 points. Due to the level increase to level 5, your source of evil is increased to +1. Improved all attributes due to Express going bankrupt, received the title Favorable. Enjoy the game. Hee, the system wrote. They thought they would laugh at him, Luigi asked with his last sentence. He demanded an apology. Let's move on. For the sake of generous rewards, he will turn a blind eye to this, he said, Looking at the screen, a message appeared. Level 5. Race human. Strength 2. Attack power is extremely weak. Dexterity 2. Build 10. Perception 2. Spirit 17. Defense is normal. Mental resistance is normal. Susceptibility is low. Speed is clumsy. The mechanism is the source of evil, +1. Luja came to the conclusion that his physical indicators left much to be desired. Despite the impressive development of spiritual power, the body clearly could not keep up with the internal changes. And even this mechanism, evil source +1, light blocking effect, active evil touch ability, passive suggestion ability, +1 enhanced effect, absorption leader 40, -17% ASP, use ASD 10 minutes. He is one step closer to the monster of legend, and is now ready to face the true mastermind of evil with his power. You can summon creatures that will become minions and die for you. They are a projection of the main body, so their power will be limited by yours. Once you die, you can't summon creatures again. Note, I know who you want to summon, but first, think about whether you're worthy. Isn't today's comment a little too obvious? Luji thought. The title, Favorable, appeared. Finally, he said the title. The title, Favorable. Effect. The target that attacks you will have a certain chance of becoming cursed. Note, Auspicious Royal Rabbit. You are safe. Suddenly the doors opened. 2 people wearing helmets and carrying blasters entered. They approached prisoner 001 and asked him to take part in the experiment. Luji clarified what kind of experiment this was. One of the guards abruptly ordered him to do without any nonsense and began to feel him up. Luji expressed dissatisfaction, saying that he should be treated with more reverence. One of the guys mockingly asked him if he considered himself special. The second guard ordered not to talk to him. Accompanied by both guards, Luji left the room. They moved along a long corridor leading to the laboratory section. People in white coats were scurrying around. Some were arguing about something. Some were writing down data. Disturbing images were shown on multiple screens. The subject, face to face with the monster, screamed, begging for mercy. One of the lab technicians calmly reported the failure of experiment number 7 and suggested moving on to the next stage. In another corner, a doctor demanded confirmation of the existence of a record of the injection of the decomposition serum into the test subject, insisting on urgency. Luji, watching what was happening, noted that it all looked quite original. Red alarms flashed on the screens. The system reported instability of Object 003. Isekai'd was showing signs of aggression. The personnel were ordered to immediately head to the containment area. Several fighters, weapons at the ready, rushed to the open door. Luigi caught a glimpse of the object's name and was surprised. Isekai'd? He paused for a second, but the guard next to him sharply pulled him back, demanding that he not hesitate. Luigi grinned, nodded, and calmly placed his palm on the sensor by the door. Access was granted. The guard gestured forward and threw a short instruction over his shoulder. Inside, all you had to do was press a button. Luigi nodded in response and offered a restrained thank you. Meanwhile, he already had a small control panel in his hand. Item name, remote control, quality, green. Its effect is based on a new type of signal that most security devices cannot detect. It can be used to detonate a device with a single click. The description states that it is a must-have item for a traveler. One of the guards instructed Judas to go to Dr. Mimer to protect her. He himself decided to go to Isekai'd. The subordinate agreed, and he named Luigi his confidant, assuring him that he would cope with the task. The guard said that he could be trusted, and there was no need to worry. Luigi found himself in a locked room. He noted to himself that the fourth guy seemed trustworthy. At this time, a voice was heard. The experiment was beginning. In the center of the room, there was an aquarium with an unknown creature. A hologram of a woman in a lab coat responded to Ludgie's inquiry about the nature of the experiment, introducing herself as Dr. Mimer and the current research supervisor. She explained the nature of Project 032. Known as the brain snake, it is a creature that can enter bodies through the mouth, after which it burrows into the victim's brain and parasitizes it. The main task of the organism is to use the host body as a mother's, absorbing its best genes and producing improved offspring. At the same time, the parasite is extremely selective. It is interested only in highly developed organisms. People with low intelligence are of no value. Dr. Mimer explained that the main goal of the experiment is to determine the possibility of mass production of offspring with extremely high levels of evil. Ludzi, as the owner of a unique source and rare characteristics, was considered the best candidate for conducting such an experiment. On behalf of the Disaster Association, Dr. Mimer expressed her gratitude for his unintentional participation. There was a knock on Dr. Mimer's door. One of the guards reported the mission had been completed. Dr. Mimer, without turning around, recognized him as Judas and inquired about the situation with Object 003. He reported that the containment team had misjudged the subject's mental stability, causing him to awaken prematurely. The doctor noted the importance of the current experiment and ordered not to interfere. Judas agreed, but behind his back, he already had a knife in his hand. He braced himself for the blow, raising his weapon. However, the doctor suddenly added that she had one more question. At the moment when Judas was about to strike, she asked how Judas died. His movement froze in midair. Armed guards ran into the office and demanded that the unknown person raise his hands. The guard's identity turned out to be false. When asked how he was exposed, Dr. Mimer answered calmly. Every real employee, upon entering her office, pronounces a unique code known only to the two of them. The doctor, without losing her cool, asked a clarifying question. What exactly did the subject do with Object 003 besides the injection and awakening? The false guard, smiling slightly, realized that this action had not gone unnoticed. An explosion thundered in one of the rooms. A large amount of explosives was planted in the room where Object 001 was located. The object managed to escape. The fake guard, watching what was happening, commented that this is it. The doctor, catching his tone, asked him to state his name. He introduced himself as Ning Feng and bowed mockingly. The guards opened fire. Bullets pierced his body and he fell to the floor, riddled with gunfire. All departments were immediately notified of the incident, and an order was filed to begin the process of paying compensation to Judah's family. When asked by the guards whether it was worth arresting Object 001, the doctor ordered to refrain from such actions. She stated that the real experiment was starting now. All exits were to be closed, and departments were to begin recording observations. The guards were stunned by her determination. Subject 001, according to the data, is a time traveler. However, for some reason, his evil value exceeds even their own. The doctor noted that if they manage to study him, it will be a significant breakthrough. The employee tried to remind him that there were still people from the association in the detention center, and if Object 001 got out of control, there could be losses. However, the doctor abruptly interrupted him, asking what the purpose of the Disaster Association was. One of the guards answered first. He is the truth. The rest of those present simultaneously finished the phrase, "Truth lives forever," and bowed their heads in worship, as if in a pre-learned ritual. Messages appeared for the traveler, warning that he had been assigned a special status, an inner ghost. This means that he will have extra time to prepare and take measures to help his comrades escape from the Disaster Association. A special ability allows you to avoid immediate punishment after dying in a trial. Instead, the traveler switches to spectator mode. If the team successfully completes the challenge, death is not counted. and the reward will be received. In case of failure, death. Ning Feng, one of the top 10 best travelers with the unique ability of curator, admitted his own carelessness. He originally intended to deal with the boss alone, but the similar boss in this dungeon belongs to a strong opponent, so he had to change tactics. Thanks to his ability, which was not dependent on death, he was given the opportunity to think about everything anew. After that, he turned his attention to his comrades. Ning Feng carefully studied the CCTV screens. He saw Dali desperately running away from the monstrous monster, and called him a weakling. His thoughts turned to Pen. The girl seemed worthy to him, but too reserved, given her capabilities. Then Ning Feng's gaze fell on another cell. The room was filled with smoke. The door was open. Ning Feng noted that Luji had not taken the chance to escape, and wondered if he had come here just for fun and to catch bugs. After all, security could have shown up at any moment. The system blocked Luji's obscene language. He noted that he could not get out of this place for 18 nights in a row, and turned to the creature. The process was launched with the secret word, success. Luji teased the creature until he couldn't take it anymore. Luji waved the worm while laughing, causing Ning Feng to be confused and begin to doubt his sanity. Luji told the creature that he knew it couldn't stand thick-headed people and said that they would be spending a long time together. He then tried to eat the creature, which squeaked until it disappeared into his mouth, making a loud squeak. Ninfion watched the events on the screen and noted with bewilderment that Luji was clearly ill. He didn't understand why the system couldn't find a more adequate participant. At this moment, a message appeared about assigning Luji the status of parasite and issuing him with a weapon, 4 tentacles. With the ability to squeeze, grab, throw, and intimidate, all of the hero's attributes have been improved. Luji felt tentacles growing out of his back. The system soon reported that due to the high resistance of Luji's brain, the parasite could not fully control his actions. Ning Feng was still confused, trying to figure out if this was all normal. The guards approached the chamber, reporting the escape of Subject 001 and demanding that he be captured. Luji smiled as he prepared to attack. The guards opened fire in an attempt to stop him, but Luji deftly dodged the bullets and approached them. The guards screamed in panic as Luji began to strike with his tentacles, knocking the blasters out of their hands. In the doctor's office, the guards asked what to do next, to which she replied that they should continue recording what was happening. Specimen 001 had an unknown extreme value of evil. Behavior indicated that when a certain threshold of evil was reached, there are disruptions in logical thinking and cognitive processes of the body. The cameras showed the guards being knocked to the floor. Luji felt like he finally had the strength to defend himself. After a short internal dialogue with them, the tentacles disappeared back into his back, obeying his will. A huge fish was approaching Peng's chamber. The girl grabbed her by the fin and climbed onto her back, holding a gun in her hands. She decided that spending resources on destroying the fish was too much of a hassle, and that it would be better to deal with it quickly. There was a note on the fish's body asking it to name Ning Feng the most handsome. Pan said these words, after which the system confirmed the password as correct. Following this, a hologram of the Earth appeared on the wall, a modified projector that had to be held in the hand when used. Pan thought with irritation that all this was the work of a shameless man, and, dropping to the ground, glanced at the fish that stood behind her. The creature looked enraged, its eyes glowing red. Pan approached the hologram as the fish lunged forward to attack. She crashed into the wall with all her might, breaking through it, and stones poured out of her mouth. The system registered the completion of the task. Following this, a message was heard with a clear note of reproach. The system noted the disdain in Peng's voice as she entered her password and expressed hope that in the future her tone would be more respectful and confident. Pan delivered a precise blow, breaking the projector's mount, and then lifted the device from the floor. She asked that next time we try to do without additional comments. Pan looked at the device and noticed that it looked quite expensive. At this moment, Ningfeng's surprised voice sounded in the observation center. An automatically modified projector. Why did she take it? Who is this, anyway? He frowned, but quickly brushed off his doubts. No matter. Her power was quite strong anyway. Nothing to worry about. Ninfion watched Dali's cell. He didn't understand why they would send someone who couldn't even handle one monster to such a test. However, he knew that thanks to his intervention, even the weakest participants could get a chance. He activated help in the interface. Dali immediately accepted the offer. A capsule descended from the ceiling and crashed noisily near the monster. An explosion followed. The system has detected the use of an item. Name: paralyzing grenade. Quality: green item. Properties: single use. Contains concentrated paralyzing agents. Temporarily immobilizes the target for 10 seconds. Limitation: only effective against creatures below the strong level. Note: using a grenade during high-risk situations or when the evil level is extreme may result in a penalty. The beast reacted sharply to what was happening. His fur stood up, became electrified. The blue flashes in his eyes intensified. He began to growl. The system recorded the end of the stage. The target was paralyzed. 10 seconds were given to perform the decisive action. At that moment, a voice was heard condemning the installation of an additional trap, clearly considering it unnecessary. Dali came down to the ground. He had a weapon in his hands, a knife with which he slowly approached the beast. The image of the monster was suddenly replaced by a memory. A kitten covered in dirt, surrounded by a laughing crowd. They threw stones at him and he meowed pitifully. The memory of that moment brought rage and despair to the beast's eyes. The blue glow in his gaze grew stronger. The system has registered data on the object. Experiment. Sample 057. Traits. Shows hostility towards people. Propensity for violence. Desire to consume human flesh. Possible cause: psychological trauma received prior to incarceration. Experiment record. According to the results, the object was expected to have higher potential. However, due to the low evil stat, funding was stopped. At this time, Dali stood with a knife in front of the monster. He exhaled and said that everything had finally calmed down. At that moment, splashes of blood were heard in the chamber. The splashes flew sharply in different directions. A thick pool of blood was spreading on the floor. Dali breathed heavily, trying to comprehend what he had just done. A comparison popped into his head. The look in this creature's eyes reminded him of the eyes of a kitten abandoned at a shelter, confused and not understanding. As if driven by instinct, Dali cut his palm and held it up to the beast. The creature opened its mouth, and his blood flowed inside. Dali's health rapidly halved. He stopped, feeling weak. It felt like he was about to lose consciousness. He tried to stop the beast, warning it that he could die if it continued. The system recorded the message: "The task, Pet the Cat, has been completed. The cat has been calmed down." Realizing that time was not on his side, Dali noted that the task was complete, and it was time to leave. He moved away, but heard heavy breathing behind him. The creature did not lag behind, growling as it got closer. However, the next moment, his body began to glow. The flash engulfed the beast, and he turned into a small kitten. He calmly jumped onto Dali's shoulder and meowed quietly. Dali turned around. The kitten looked at him as if he had already made up his mind. He understood. He wanted to go with him. Dali smiled at the kitten and said that he would be his dad, or even his grandfather. The kitten responded with a quiet meow. Suddenly the guards opened fire with blasters, but the man only grinned, and it was as if he dissolved into thin air, instantly appearing next to them. He calmly said that today was Thursday, and that he had turned 50. A hologram in the shape of an eye flickered on his stomach, like a counter. The guards were scared, their confidence was gone. One of them started begging to let him go, but the man just laughed. In response, he demonstrated a terrifying display of force that sent the guards fleeing in panic. He tore out the guards' eyes. There were 48 left to collect. Their screams echoed down the corridor, one of them trying to call for reinforcements. One of them placed his hand on a special sensor. Sample 019, nicknamed Crazy Old Man, was originally kept in a top-secret facility. The guard, noticing the day of the week, casually said that today was Thursday. The man laughed in response, noting that he had not had the opportunity to show himself for a long time, and that now the situation was quite suitable for this. A message appeared on the screen with data about the sample. The evil level reached 8,400, which was considered critical and extremely dangerous. The instructions for keeping it strictly stated that the crazy old man was to be kept in a sealed chamber to prevent the possibility of determining the date. Thursday, December 22nd. Precautions. The crazy old man appears to be benevolent at first glance and does not pose a threat under normal circumstances. However, when faced with any mentions associated with the number 4, the old man falls into a state of extreme excitement. In this state, he persistently demands 50 random items from the environment. If his demands are not met, he kills the target. The note warns that if anyone mentions Thursday again, that person is best dealt with without mercy. The vault is top secret, and only directors and higher-ranking officials have access to it, the guard explained. The second one responded by noting that they seemed to have been left alone. The guard, in a panic, declared that everyone would die. The man who suddenly appeared in front of them ordered them to stand up and take up arms. It was Captain Zhu. He suggested distracting specimen 019 so the others could escape. One of the guards noted with alarm that the captain was going to use the decomposition emulsion, warning that it was mortally dangerous. But the captain, without delay, injected himself and ordered to save himself, taking out an access card, after which he entered the room with the sample. He understood that, as captain, he was obliged to take this step. Luigi walked out into a corridor littered with the bodies of guards and scientists. They were all dead. The air was thick with the smell of blood and burning. Luigi moved along this corridor, avoiding the corpses. He noted that, apparently, a significant number of bridges had broken out of control. Suddenly, he noticed movement. One of the scientists was still alive. He wheezed weakly, barely maintaining consciousness. At this time, the voice of Luigi the insect was heard, who greedily noted that he especially loved the unfinished ones. The scientist screamed, begging not to kill him, assuring that he did not want to die. Luigi, noting his despair with mockery, remarked that the unwillingness to die was no more a guarantee of salvation than his own unwillingness to starve. He leaned closer to the scientist, who, with a final burst of energy, shouted that he was in charge of the research and could help get out of here if he was spared. Luigi leaned over to the scientist and whispered in his ear so that he would remember. Next time, if you had useful information, you shouldn't hide it. You need to tell him right away. Luigi squeezed the scientist's throat with his tentacles and demanded that he tell him everything he knew about the research and the association. The scientist explained that the Catastrophe Association is a huge, influential organization whose official goal is to find the truth. The location of the headquarters is kept a closely guarded secret, but its presence is felt everywhere, from the very bottom to the top of the government. The scientist said that the particular branch they were currently in was run by Dr. Mimira. It is here that key experiments are conducted to study the nature of extreme evil. As part of their research into the concept of extreme evil, they regularly captured a variety of creatures from different locations. The goal was to identify patterns between these creatures and the level of evil they exude. However, as the data accumulated, it became clear that strong specimens alone were not enough. If the creature's evil level did not reach a certain point, The results obtained were unstable and practically useless for analysis. It was obvious that true progress required beings of a higher order, with a ferocious or even cruel level. Not only were they difficult to catch, but the intervention itself could lead to unpredictable consequences. So for a long time, progress was stalled, until a unique opportunity arose. The association learned that a large-scale battle between two ferocious creatures took place in one of the regions. After the collision, the battle site was completely destroyed, but one of the creatures survived, although it was seriously injured. On his orders, that very creature was captured, although this required enormous resources and considerable financial costs. He expected that this success would ensure his advancement, and indeed, Dr. Mimer appointed him project manager, recognizing his merits. It was expected that the first results of the research would arrive literally the day before, but the situation changed dramatically. Dr. Mimer suddenly announced that another sample had been discovered, one with a level of evil significantly higher than the previous one. Despite numerous objections and attempts to defend his position, the scientist was unable to influence her decision. Mimer simply ignored his arguments. The scientist was furious. He declared that Dr. Mimer was simply an envious fool who was haunted by the success of his research. He said he intended to rerun the study, prove he was right, and kick her off the project. The scientist explained that, despite the fact that Mimer had blocked the main route to the laboratory, he knew of one secret route. If Luigi helped him get to a place called Hare's Lip, he promised to show him this bypass route. When Luigi asked if there was a way to subdue the creature, the scientist answered in the affirmative with a sly grin. After all, he was the author of the plan. Luigi grinned. Without objection, he agreed. Let him lead. The hare lip was right on course, but it was impossible for two people to get there. The madman, the captain, found the elixir of decomposition and completely lost his mind. Luigi asked if the form belonged to one of their people. The scientist replied that it was the captain. He also noted with contempt that the captain had done this in order to save a couple of useless subordinates. The captain tried to attack, but the force field did not allow him to get closer. He was locked in. Luigi recalled that he spoke of trying to protect his people. The scientist dismissively waved it off, calling these people lower-level security whose lives were worth nothing. The scientist asked with a grin whether he could handle the captain, clearly expecting a positive answer. Cracks appeared across the protective field. Luigi calmly ordered the doors to be opened and hugged the scientist. Captain Jules has transformed into a monster with a terrifying mouth, posing a huge danger. He jumped at the old man, but Lodge with his tentacles managed to intervene in time and pushed the old man away, protecting him. The captain was overcome with rage. Suddenly the captain was shot straight in the head. Pan with a gun asked if help was needed. The old man warned that these creatures were extremely dangerous, and it was better to stay away from them. He himself calmed down, thinking that there shouldn't be anything too scary here. Turning around, he saw Dali, who admitted that he was too weak to fight and was hiding here. A kitten with red eyes meowed quietly nearby. Pan used a 3-cycle spell, Fireball, to attack the captain. But he easily dodged and walked through the fire, demonstrating his strength. Luigi grabbed Pan by the waist with one of his tentacles, lifted her up, and moved her away, protecting her from the captain's blow. Pan was surprised. She asked what this thing was, to which Luigi replied that it was a fetter. The captain looked at them with fury. Pan wondered if the bonds would leave marks on her. And Luigi noticed that she does have skills with increased damage, but it's difficult to hit the target. After that, Luigi told Pen to go, and she howled, rising into the air on a tentacle. Luigi threw Pen sharply, right at the captain. Pen shouted back, but her words were automatically filtered out by the system. The captain grabbed her by the throat and tried to hit her, but Luigi intervened. He squeezed the scissors with one of his tentacles and struck the captain. He cried out in pain. At that moment, Pen pulled the pin off the grenade and shoved it into the captain's mouth. Luigi quickly covered the captain's mouth with his tentacles so that he couldn't do anything. The explosion was deafening. Smoke poured out of the captain's mouth, and he fell to his knees. Luigi stood behind him, watching calmly. Pen, with her hand to her throat, said that Luigi had gone too far. He replied that it was retaliation for the shot Pen had intended to give him. Now they were even. Pen was surprised to learn that Luigi was aware of everything that was going on. But Luigi said that the captain was still alive, kicking him with his foot. The captain, despite his condition, offered the traveler to listen to him. The copying of the Calamity Dungeon will begin in 5 minutes. The traveler will enter the test space at exactly this time. The main task is to ensure the stable conduct of the research and prevent the 4 travelers from leaving the Disaster Association. Completing the mission will reward you with an extreme value of 2,000 points. Information about the increased level of complexity is strictly classified. Any attempts to disclose it will be punished mercilessly. The guard noted that new travelers would arrive soon, although no one knew who exactly. The commander urged them to prepare for the test, but the guardian replied that preparation was pointless. It was almost impossible to survive. When asked how to survive, there were different desires. Some wanted to just get out of here. Others wanted to confess to the girl they had loved for a long time. Despite everything, one of them promised to save the lives of his comrades, because everyone has their own business that needs to be done. After Dr. Mimer's successful research, one of the guards promised the management would definitely give everyone a long vacation. This caused joy among the security guards. At this time, the captain confessed that the elixir of decomposition had driven him mad, and although thanks to it he had come to his senses, he did not have long to live. Luigi demanded to say everything he wanted. The captain asked to release people who do not want to be at odds, but are only under the control of the mysterious noise. At this point, a warning appeared. Disclosure of information about the extremely evil game is strictly prohibited, and repeated leaks threaten destruction. The captain became furiously indignant, declaring that he was already dead and was not afraid of anyone. However, Luigi quickly restrained him, tying his hands and covering his mouth with tentacles. Peng was surprised, but Luigi explained that it was anti-theft equipment and asked her to help him secure it. The captain resisted but was helpless. Luigi began by saying that he hated psychological pressure more than anything in the world. If someone interfered, he would not be able to endure it for long. Then he asked the captain if his mother hadn't taught him to behave properly when asking for something. The captain, undressing and giving away everything he had on him, begged. Luigi simply replied, "Not bad, go ahead." The captain, a little surprised, asked if he would fulfill his request. A small flask of medicine quietly rolled to his feet, which surprised everyone, especially the captain. The captain took a deep breath. In front of him lay a vial of the drug, an artifact called panacea. Despite its blue quality, its effect corresponded to the violet level. The remedy eliminated most known diseases, including poisoning, curses, and other negative conditions. However, unlike the original, this version had side effects. There were rumors that some men changed their gender after taking the drug, but the pharmaceutical company called these rumors the machinations of competitors. Luigi made no secret of his intentions. Help was not an act of compassion, but part of a deal. He was interested in the captain's mission, what task the system had set for him. Full disclosure was not required, only as much as could be said without triggering the kill mechanism built into each participant's protocol. The captain understood the terms. This was a chance not only for salvation, but also for a brief release from the yoke of orders. He gathered his will into a fist and began to speak. At this time, the kitten underwent a transformation, turning into something sinister, and suddenly attacked the old man. Dali asked Peng if she had ever seen anything like this before. She quickly dismissed it as an anomaly. This surprised Dali, but he did not ask any more questions. Lugi suggested a retreat and immediately announced that he had a new idea. The group gathered to act in a coordinated manner. Meanwhile, Old Man Thursday, who had lost consciousness during the conflict, came to his senses. He shook himself off, rose from the floor, and, as if nothing had happened, declared that the world was full not only of pain and violence, but also of worldly wisdom. With this statement, he walked forward briskly, as if having forgotten the recent horror. The scientist, leading the group, reported that in front of them was Object 003, Zaicha Guba. He noted that the creature's serious injuries helped contain it. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to control. Logi asked how dangerous the creature was now. The scientist replied that this was his best result, and showed the image on the screen. The girl sitting on the pedestal, with the guard kneeling next to her, was Miss Tender Lips. She stuck her foot in the guard's mouth and asked if it hurt, then, with a sharp movement, ripped his mouth open. The guard groaned in pain. The scientist explained that he had injected her with the 2000 SS decomposition elixir, but the expected mutations had not occurred. Apart from a slight near-conscious state, all indicators remained normal and corresponded to the experimental conditions. Luigi, Pen, and Dolly were confused, and the scientist asked himself irritably why. Lulzi asked the scientist how he was going to regain control over the girl. The scientist apologized for the excitement and explained that the girl had escaped when the control was down, but everything could be restored by setting the system back up. Dali was outraged, believing that they could simply be sent to their deaths, but the scientist assured him that he had equipment that would help, and there was no other way out. Everyone wants to get out. Then it was decided that Pen would stay to look after the scientist, and Dali and Luigi would go into battle. Dali resisted, asked not to take him, but was dragged away. Peng threatened the scientist with a weapon, warning him. The scientist calmed her down, assuring her that they were on the same side because they also wanted to get out as soon as possible. Luigi, along with Dali and the kitten, approached Miss Sweet Lips. Dali asked what they should do, to which Luigi replied that Dali should go forward, grabbing him with his tentacles. Dali tried to object and warned that they wouldn't have time, but Luigi abruptly threw him down right at Miss Tender Lips, and he fell at her feet. Dali looked up in horror. Miss Tender Lips stood before him. Luigi smiled and asked how she was. The girl answered with a question and immediately rushed to the attack. At this time, a message appeared about the skill Major Evil and the task to find a creature that is favorable to the summoner and ready to become his minion. Miss Tenderlips was approaching, but suddenly another girl appeared from Luigi and protected him from the blow with her axe. The call was successful, and she appeared. The butcher with the question of why the first person she sees is some crazy fool. With confirmation that she was the one called, the fight continued. The summoned object turned out to be a projection of the main body. Its memory was not synchronized with the main one, so its strength and appearance could change, depending on the summoner's strength. Luigi cursed, expressing his irritation. The butcher immediately admitted that it was the baby who had called the old woman and promised to protect him. Luigi warned that the sponge was quite strong, but she confidently replied that it could not defeat her. Suddenly, the butcher received a powerful blow and flew into the wall, getting her head stuck in the hole created by the blow. The butcher was surprised by the girl's level and asked what her level was. Luigi replied that it was the same as hers, which caused confusion. At that moment, Miss Tenderlips began a new attack, but the butcher girl managed to put up a barrier with her axe. Butcher admitted that she could not win due to the summoner's lack of strength, which weakened her. Luigi, striking with scissors, asked simply to help buy time. The butcher girl agreed and decided not to be afraid of the enemy anymore. Dali asked if it was a controller, to which they confirmed by pointing to a red button with instructions to simply press it. Dali pressed the button, and the system urged him to hurry. He announced that he was planting the bomb. Hearing this, the scientist was surprised and tried to warn that it was impossible to simply destroy this object. Dolly suggested looking at information about the item, and a dialog box with data appeared on the screen. Quantum bomb, consumable, purple quality, effect upon activation. Complete destruction of everything around. The technology of its operation remained a mystery. The scientist wondered how such an object had been obtained. Ben reminded them that they were time travelers and were prepared to accept any outcome. The scientist noted that everything had been carefully calculated in advance. At this time, Luigi and the butcher were fighting the girl Tender Lips. Luigi warned the butcher and stabbed him with the scissors. The scientist handed over an access card with a reminder that there were only 3 minutes left and thanked for their cooperation. Sponge Girl collapsed to the floor, screaming. Luigi checked on Butcher. She was fine, albeit with severe fatal injuries. Butcher explained that they had a good relationship since she was able to be summoned. She said goodbye and disappeared. And Luigi noted that she was indeed quite unusual.